A situation where I was no one, no representative of people.
It makes sense. Great. Yeah. I think we need to find time and discuss this. Now that you are the voice of the people, we need to find time and discuss this properly and see what your own ideas would be about resolving that age-long conflict, etc. All right, but let's get back to business. I mean, the president 2 days ago delivered the State of the Nation address, and his verdict he started with was that, and I quote, "I am sad to report that the state of our nation is not good. Our economy is in crisis and our people are suffering unprecedented hardship." Dr. Ban, I'll start off with you. The economy is in crisis. Would that be a statement of fact? And the fact that our people are suffering unprecedented hardships, would this be a reflection of the state of our nation in your view?
Thank you very much, and a very good morning again to your listeners this morning. Yeah, so I had opportunity to listen to the president while he delivered the State of the Nation to the 9th Parliament. Of course, Article 67 of the 1932 Constitution enjoins the president and any other president that would come to present the State of the Nation to the Ghanaian people through the Parliament of Ghana. So it was a constitutional mandate that the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, was fulfilling in that order. Now, to come back to the speech that the President delivered, I have had the opportunity to also peruse the speech further after the delivery of his address. And you asked me the question that the President says that the state of the nation is very bad. Is it something that...
You said it's not good.
It's not good. Okay. Okay. So is it something that maybe I may allude to? So before then, what are the indicators that show that the economy is in a bad state or it's in a good state? We need to establish that premise before we can actually make any conclusion. So it's very, very important that we consider this premise. Now, the first most important thing that I would want to begin with is the fact that the president talked about debt.
Debt.
In terms of debt. I mean, talking about the fact that Ghana is saddled with debt. And then there were no amount of money left in reserves. And there, I even got a bit confused when he spoke about reserve, whether he was referring to the GIR or he was referring to, I don't know what he meant by that reserve. But later, he talked about sinking fund. Of course, the sinking fund couldn't have been a reserve on its own because it's just another form of account that payments go through, or a country can decide
a dedicated account to pay our debts.
Of course, I mean, there are so many dedicated accounts when you go to the Ministry of Finance that are used to pay debt. It's not just only the sinking fund. I mean, the sinking fund became very common to the Ghanaian because during the reign of Honorable Mr. Sektepe, that was the main fund that he dedicated in using to pay debt. I mean, I have had the opportunity to speak to some other people, I mean, including the past minister, Honorable Antha, who also gives the notion that when he was there, he had other accounts rather than a sinking fund that he was operationalizing. So, and let me state on fact there that no law mandates the finance minister
to use a particular
use the sinking fund. No. It says may. It is not shall. If you look at the, I think it's a PRMI. Yeah, it says may. It's not shall. So if it is shall, then the person or the minister is mandated to use. But it says may. So it is the discretion of the minister who at that time heads the Ministry of Finance to decide and say, this is the fund or the account that I want to use to operationalize and that. Now, let's go back into the history of all these debts that the president spoke about. It is very, very important that we establish the facts. Now, under the Fourth Republic, before the late president, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings, left office and bequeathed power to President J.E. Akufo, Ghana's total debt stood at around $7 billion. $7 billion. And there, but then, given the exchange rate, the exchange rate was most at par in terms of converting to Ghana cedis. So, for the purposes of analysis, I would want to speak to the dollar term, because the dollar is a more stable currency and it more or less resistant to inflation and all other factors. So Ghana's total debt stood at $7 billion. Now, within the reign of President Akufo between 2001 to 2008, Ghana added a little over, and I mean, let me say President Akufo added a little over $107 billion to Ghana's total debt. So as of 2008, when President Akufo was leaving office, Ghana's total debt was about $8.07 billion. So that was Ghana's total debt at then.
That's after we were forgiving the debt and all
yes,
that.
the HEPIC and all those things. So those cumulated into why our debt actually didn't increase significantly just as compared to previous years.
But now, if we were forgiving our debt and you brought it to 8 billion, that's quite significant.
So it was 1 billion that was
1
added.
billion.
Yeah, because I told that when President Rawlings was bequeathing to him, it was 7 billion.
Yeah, but we were forgiving a lot of that debt.
Yes, so there was 1 billion added. Now, if you permit me to give the history of those that have come after him, you will realize that indeed it was a good gesture. Now, between 2009 to 2016, Ghana's total debt, which stood at 8.07 billion as at 2008, actually increased to $29.2 billion. So between 2009 to 2016, a total of $21.13 billion was added to Ghana's total debt. That is the state of the Ghanaian debt. Now, so when President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bamiyan were taking power in 2017, 7 January, Ghana's total debt stood at $29.2 billion. That was the debt they inherited, including President Akufo and President Jerry John Rawlings and the late President John Evans Atta Mills. Now, all these data that I'm giving are available on the BOG's economic and financial data, their quarterly reports. These data is vividly captured there, so you can double check there. So now, fast forward, between 2017 till date, till December 2024, when President Akufo-Addo's term, technically, and I'm using the term technically cautiously, came to an end, Ghana's total debt had moved from 29.2 billion to 47.9 billion. That is according to the BOG Economic Summary and Statistics Report. Now, if you multiply these total debt, the accumulated, this is accumulated debt. If you multiply this accumulated debt of 47.9 billion by an average exchange rate of, let's say, 15 Ghana cedis, that is giving you a total debt of about 718 billion Ghana cedis. Now, if you want to split this into pieces and go by regime after regime, now, if you take the 29.2 billion that I explained earlier, now, assuming that President Akufo-Addo had not borrowed and our exchange rate had depreciated as it has over the years to date, that I am using an average exchange rate of 15 Ghana cedis, the debt of $29.2 billion in today's term would have translated to about 438 billion Ghana cedis. So if you decouple President Akufo-Addo's 18.7 billion that he has added to the public debt, and you multiply the 18.7 billion also by the 15 Ghana cedis exchange rate that I'm doing, that also gives you something around 280.5 billion Ghana cedis. So that is the state of the public debt. So when His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama was being sworn in, Ghana's total debt as a percentage of GDP sits at around 72%. That is per the Summary of Economic and Financial Data report, January report, that was released by the BOG on their website. That is where the public debt sits at currently. So that is the premise that I want to lay forward. Now, if you compare when His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was handing over power to President Akufo-Addo in terms of percentage-wise, Ghana's total debt sat around about 73%. So marginally, if you compare the 2016 that he handed over power to President Akufo-Addo, and you compare the 2024 or 2025 January 7 that President Akufo-Addo handed over power to him, I mean, that is before the rebased economy in terms of President John Dramani Mahama's first chapter. Okay. Now, after the economy was rebased, the debt actually came down to, I think, about 55 point something percent.
But that's what we should be using now, because that's the common denominator.
Yes. So that's the premise that I also want to lay fairly there. Now, so you come back to the question that the president says that you asked me that is Ghana in crisis? Of course, it will be very difficult for me to say that Ghana is in crisis. And I'm saying this because every country owes. I mean, the most powerful country on earth, which is the United States of America, is one of the most indebted countries in the world. So, of course, I cannot say that because Ghana has a debt to GDP ratio of about 72%, so Ghana is in crisis. Of course, if in economics, borrowing is not that bad, but it depends on what you use the borrowing for. So that is very important. So we can also look at the details of that matter. So fast forward in terms of the state of the Ghanaian economy. Now, if you compare the economy to 2016, then of course we haven't, till today, then of course we haven't done much in terms of improvement in the general economy. That is, if you are looking at the figures for today. But however, it is also important to also admit that the economy that Nana Akufo-Addo inherited in 2016, between 2017 to 2020, a lot of things changed. For example, when Nana Akufo-Addo inherited 2017 economy, you had an economy with an inflationary rate of, I think, about 15.4% as at 2016, December 2016. Now, let's not forget that within the reign of Akufo-Addo, Ghana had one of its lowest inflationary rate ever under the Fourth Republic. And I'm talking about an inflationary rate of, I think, about 7.2 or 7.4% thereabout. So that is one of the factors that we also need to credit him for.
But what's the effect of that then? If you took it from maybe a higher point, you go down to 7, and you spike it to 54%, and then you end at 23, what was the point then?
So that is why I am coming back to also talk about the factors that happened within that period. Let's remember that President John Dramani Mahama, in his first term, and when I talk about his first term, I'm referring to the 2013 to 2016. So readers should please take note of that. Now, the late President John Evans Atta Mills bequeathed him of an inflation rate of about what? About 9.4%. At the time that he was leaving office, inflation was about 15.4%. And we didn't have any COVID, we didn't have any Russia-Ukraine war, we didn't have any pandemic. But that is not an excuse I want to give in terms of the analysis. So that tells you that in terms of the marginal changes, of course, there has been some significant improvement over the years under both regimes. Now, I am more interested in the president. And for me, like I keep saying, if you look at the vote that Ghanaians gave President John Dramani Mahama on December 7th, I saw it to be a vote of confidence in His Excellency, the President. And for that matter, it was also a vote that the average Ghanaian communicated that, look, we have enough confidence in you for you to turn things around for us, given that he had already campaigned and advocated that the Ghanaian economy was in dire situation. So already that premise was well ringed in the ears of Ghanaians. I'm sure if Ghanaians had the notion that the Ghanaian economy was all rosy, of course, they wouldn't have given the nod to him. They would have given the nod to the incumbent to continue. But because the average Ghanaian saw that there was something wrong with the Ghanaian economy, that is why he was giving the vote to come into power. And of course, he promised so many things. So for me, critically, I was looking at a situation, for example, over the years. One of the reasons why our debt has worsened over the years is the fact that we've not been able to generate enough revenue domestically. In fact, if you take the 2024 budget statement, if you take revenue, total revenue, and you decouple grants out of the revenue, total revenue, and I'm talking about tax revenue, as a percentage of GDP sits around 13%. Now, this is woefully inadequate as compared to the sub-Saharan average of about 18-19%. Now, if you decide to add even grant to the tax revenue, that puts us at around 16.4%. That in itself is still woefully inadequate as compared to the sub-Saharan African revenue. So it tells you that over the years, in terms of domestic tax mobilization, in terms of revenue generation, we've not done much. Now, if you have a country of a population of 34 million people, and the percentage of this population that pays direct tax, and I'm here carefully, direct tax, is not more than 10% of your population, then you have a problem. Because government each and every day needs to provide public goods and services.
Yeah, so you see, I get the point you are making. I get the premise you're trying to set, etc. But that's why there was leadership. I mean, that's why. So these are problems that many governments should be elected to solve. So if you oversee the problem you inherited, and perhaps even worsened, or you leave it the same way you inherited it, then there was no point in you coming into power anyway. So you mentioned the indicators, inflation, etc. Exchange rate was around 4 cedis in 2017, January 4.2 when the MPP took over.
Yes.
Now we're leaving it around 15 or 16 cedis.
No, 14.5.
No.
40.5.
January is around, roughly 15 cedis. Right.
40.5.
Roughly about
that. That is the BOG rate. No.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's significantly huge. Yeah. And that directly impacts the cost of living and many other things. The interest rates around 25%. I mean, yes, 25 when the previous regime was leaving, and then we have it around 30. That impacts businesses. You know, inflation, which is essentially a tax on the poor, 15 and to 23. All these indicators do not look good. So there was the reason for leadership. So if you tell me that inflation was at some point 7% and now it's 23, it's how sustainable that 7% was, or that single digit was. That would be important to me. If it went to 54, 40, 30, and it's coming to 23, I don't see why I should jubilate. Jubilate over what? Using what was the reference point? So the question was simple, or the premise the president set was simple, that the country was in crisis and that the economy wasn't good and our people were suffering unprecedented hardships. All the indicators we've mentioned, inflation, interest rates, exchange rate, all these directly impact the cost of living. They directly impact even the standard of living. So when he says that there are people are suffering unprecedented hardships, the point is, was he wrong? Or he was just reflecting what he saw around the country, what he's been told, and what the figures look like, you know, when he got into office.
No, thank you. You see, it's very, very important.
And I know you spent quite some time on this.
Yeah, no, so I'll just wrap up. You see, it's very important to lay the facts bare. You see, the president has been in power for, let's say, barely a month now.
Yes.
Now,
2 months.
Let me give you an example. You see, the reason why I was building that premise was because of the fact that, and I keep making this point, and it's very important that we take note of that point in terms of the revenue generation. Now, one of the reasons why I keep making this point is that, you see, the president has been in power for barely 1 month. Now, as we talk today, the president has borrowed through the domestic market at around 60 billion cedis, the equivalent of about 3.8 billion US dollars. Now, if you look at the last auction that the previous government made in terms of the 91 days T-bill rate. I mean, the 91-day T-bill rate was auctioned at, I think, around about 27%. Today, we are having the 91-day T-bill going at around 28%. I mean, if you look at the January to even 17 February, even in 17 February, we were auctioning at almost around 30%. So, of course, it tells you that things are not going to be any different from what has happened over the years. Now, if you compare in terms of the average debt accumulation domestically between 2017 January to December 2017, the average debt that was accumulated domestically was something around 13 billion Ghana cedis. Today, the average debt that has been accumulated within a month is something around 60 billion Ghana cedis. So clearly, it tells you that things can only get worse. So the point I am making is that governments over the years have been forced to take this unpalatable trajectory because we are not able to generate enough tax revenue. So that is why I was coming back to the point that I wanted the president to spare us all this data, just like you rightly summarized it. We know all this information. I wanted the president to
But he had to set a baseline because this will be captured by Hansard. He has to tell us officially what he meant so that from next year and other times, now he can build on that. So he tells us that, let's say, inflation he came to meet at, let's say, 23. Next year, he tells you that, okay, inflation is now, maybe, hopefully it goes down, maybe to 10. And so
Excellent.
This is what it is.
But the point
so there's a baseline, there's a comparator.
Yeah, so the point I am also making is that if we are comparing baseline and we are comparing performance over governments over the years, and we are looking at these starting points in terms of the debt accumulation, and within 1 month we have accumulated $3.8 billion to our debt profile, then clearly
is that different? Is that significant? Is it different from what would have accumulated or we're accumulating in the months before he took over? So this is a domestic.
Yeah, so
market.
that's what I was giving you. That's what I was giving you the premise.
Not change that
that's
much.
what I was giving you the premise. That's what I was giving you the premise that if you compare to his predecessor, because he is there to present his budget statement to Parliament. So that's why I was giving you that premise. That if you compare to his predecessor, before his predecessor presented his budget statement to Parliament, his predecessor had borrowed something between 12.5 billion
per month or in the period.
In the period from January, even that is even an cumulative figure from January to December 2017.
From the domestic
market, yes. But he has currently borrowed 60 billion. So that's why I'm telling you that until the.
But what accounted for that spike? I'll check though. What accounted for that? Because we know that some were rejected, etc.
No. So, this is the actual instruments that have been raised so far. So far, and the data is actually on the BOG website.
Very well. Prof, welcome to the program. So, Professor John Gachi is an economics senior lecturer at the UCC Business School, and he is here, and also Dr. Professor Sharif Mahmood Khalid, Economic Advisor Office of the Vice President. Professor. I beg you, Professor. We often make that mistake. Professor, senior lecturer. So, Professor. He's a professor at the UCC Business School. Apologies for that. Yes, the president says, I give you the same premise, that the state of our nation is not good. Our economy is in crisis and our people are suffering unprecedented hardships. We've heard from Dr. Bano. He said that at this trajectory, things will not even change that much because for less than 2 months, we borrowed close to 60 billion, around 59 billion. And at this rate, I'm not sure where we're going to head. What's your assessment of this statement and the president's address generally?
Well, I think the statement will have to be contextualized. The statement is premised on Article 67 of the Constitution. The president is just supposed to tell Ghanaians what has been handed over to him, how does it look like, how he wants to circumvent the situation and provide us a better economy. So that is what he has done. So I do not think that we have to belabor the point, going back into history and trying to challenge the president, he should have done it this way or not. He just painted a picture. I mean, what is critical is whether he is up to the task to resolving the problem. I believe that has been clearly indicated that he is ready to resolve the problems of the country. Critically, TB instruments are just for liability management. So they turn over within a short period of time. We borrow in the long-term domestic market to do stuff. Now we are out of the external market, we are out of the long-term domestic market. That is where our focus is supposed to be, to repair the domestic debt market so that we can begin to be issuing longer-term instruments. And that should be the focus of the president and his finance minister. We cannot continue to have, so to say, a monopolizer debt market where only treasury bill instruments is basically available to the investor. The investor doesn't have a choice. He's supposed to allocate his portfolio mainly to short-term instrument. So we need to quickly repair the domestic long-term market so that we can begin to issue long-term instrument for investors to allocate their resources between short-term and long-term, and that will bring about some sanity into the debt market. For me, that is what is crucial, because if you take President Kufuor in 2001, he has cause to lament what has been handed over to him. And when you come to President Mills in 2009, he has cause to lament what he came to see. In fact, in 2008, we were even told that if we didn't sell Ghana a telecom, we couldn't do anything. So this has been part of our our history. And if you come to even President John Mahama taking over from Mills, he has caused to articulate some of the challenges of the economy. And then the same thing with Nana Akufo-Addo, and then the same thing we have seen when John Mahama came. So this narrative will not be taken, because at the point that you are taking over, that is what you see, and you need to tell Ghanaians. But critically, you need to tell Ghanaians how you want to circumvent it. And I believe that is what we should be focusing on.
We'll come to some of the things he said he would do to resolve that. But the accusation has been that it's been a litany of lamentations, no clear path to recovery, or no clear path to take us from what he says is a dire economic situation he's found himself in.
I believe the State of Nation address is to tell Ghanaians what you inherited. What are the areas? In fact, we should even be having a portion that is clearly allocating praises when they are due. Then we should have a portion that should allocate difficulties when we have some. Then we should have a portion that should say where we are going, what you want to do. And I believe he has painted a picture to us in the energy sector. What he wants to do in the energy sector is clear, but clearer picture will be indicated by the finance minister in the budget, and that budget has not been read yet. The same thing about the finances. I think there was a problem about the issue relating to whether we're in crisis or not. Crisis should be conceptualized. It's not an English word that is commonly available. You need to look at whether you are meeting the benchmark of financial indicators. If you are not meeting those benchmarks and they prolong, it is difficult to return, then you are in a crisis. So that is as simple.
So are we in a crisis?
Yes, we're in a crisis because our finances are not meeting the benchmark. We have gone through a period where we cannot pay our debt, both domestic and external. We have just resumed repayment. Those are signs of a crisis. But that does not mean the economy is not generating resources. It does not mean we are not generating tax revenue.
Would it have been better to say the economy was on the path of recovery rather than say crisis?
Definitely some portion of the economy shows signs of recovery.
But overall, you think
overall we are still in challenge. So we need to articulate that.
I see.
But unfortunately, when these things are said, of course, the politics are surrounded. It's as though somebody has not done his bit, and those people want to also defend themselves. But the reality is that we cannot go into the international market. And that is also a source of inflow that support the entire architecture of our finances. And therefore, it's a problem. We have a huge burden of repayment of taxes. Repayment of debts. In fact, the 3-month budget that was read to us, if you put everything together, you put arrears, you put amortization of debt, repayment of interest. If you put together, you are having about 35.5% committed to issues of debt. You know, and then it's challenging what we call capital expenditure, and the capital expenditure, that is what will be putting your economy on a growth tragedy. And that is what is going to expand the economy. So we are doing little about that. It's as though we are managing an economy just to service debt. And this is troubling. So this is what we should all face and see how we can deal with that. In fact, before I came here, there was a report in 2024, December, by the World Bank. They call it Ghana Public Financial Review. In that report, all the thematic areas indicated in the report show that even our own public financial management, we are incomplete in terms of implementing them. The scores for our budgetary efficiency is low. They tell us that even though we have clear roadmap for investing in the in the protective areas of our economy. But such protection is giving a benefit that is not commensurate with what we are committing into those protective areas of our economy. They have told us that agriculture needs to have to be looked at again. We have to reform our economy to focus on things that deliver. So the way we are managing our agriculture is not going to help us. You know, so these are the summary of what the World Bank has given about the economy of Ghana. So definitely there is an issue for us to focus on to make the economy better.
Very well. This is the big issue, 97.3 City FM, also on Channel 1 television, also live on our socials. You can join the discussion as always on 020-444-7033 or 0549986996. Now, I'll speak to Dr. Kabiru and Dr. Khalid, or Professor Khalid. But let's hear what the president was saying in respect of debt in the various sectors, then we can contextualize the discussion from that side as well.
Today, inspired by the Almighty God and propelled by the massive mandate given to me by the good people of Ghana, I am moved to make a similar purposeful and bold declaration that I, John Dramani Mahama, I will fix the economic crisis confronting our country and reset it on a path of growth and prosperity. That I will fix the economic crisis confronting our country and reset it on a path of growth and prosperity. My government, working with you and every Ghanaian, will solve the challenges because we have developed the plan with our people's support. When I decided to run for president again, I did so because of what I knew about the state of our country. I was aware that huge problems awaited me upon assumption of office, but nothing could prepare anyone for the reality of the debts to which our economy and our governance had sunk. Our elders say that a frog's true length can be ascertained only after it has died. Apotrowa ni ehun ne tenten. And how right they were. It is common knowledge that our economy is in dire straits, which is putting it mildly, because an initial assessment of the books we have discovered, after initial assessment of the books, we have discovered that our economic problems are much deeper than was previously known. We have inherited a country that is broken on many fronts. The profundities of the challenges confronting us are staggering. We are saddled with staggering debts and glaring signs of almost deliberate and, in some cases, reckless mismanagement of our resources. Mr. Speaker, not even the restraints of an IMF program were enough for the previous economic managers to exercise prudence in managing our finances. After setting an inflation target of 18% by the end of 2024, the actual outturn was 23.8%, significantly higher than the threshold agreed with the IMF. The Ghana cedi continued its downward slide, losing 19% of its value against the dollar in 2024. It had already in the previous year lost 27.8% of its value. In addition to the public debt, which amounts to a staggering 721 billion cedis, several state-owned enterprises are also in debt, including the ECG, which owes 68 billion Ghana cedis.
All right, so that's the president dealing with the subject of debt, and he introduced ECG and Cocoa Board and a few other things. That's the situation we have now, 721 billion. Debt, he called it staggering, and several state-owned enterprises are also in debt, including ECG, which owes some 68 billion. Doc, you have been in the office with the vice president before, and were these figures readily available or known to you at the time you were in office? And first of all, was these figures known to you? Were these figures known to you when you were in office? Or these are coming to you slightly as a surprise?
Yeah, so Selorm, the State of the Nation address presented by the President did not present anything new that the Ghanaian people haven't been presented with. You recall that it is on the back of the debt stress that the country went for the IMF program. As at then, we're doing debt to GDP of 80%. That has even come down now to 72 or 70% thereabout. So the numbers as to the debt situation is not something new. If the president is telling the good people of Ghana that as at the time we're doing the IMF negotiation and the debt issue was at the center of this whole discussion, his team were not following that discussion, that will be pardoned. But debt and debt stress has never been an issue that is new to this government or is new to the country. As a matter of fact, our debt levels has come down following the domestic debt exchange program and then foreign debt restructuring program, where the country had to go through a painful processes of debt restructuring. So it's not anything new. And if it's now being brought and repackaged as if that the situation is even more dire now than before, that is playing with the truth. It is not a case that the situation in terms of the status and nature of the economy is even dire now than before. As a matter of fact, it was due to the cliff that we found ourselves, nearly falling off the cliff, that prompted the decision to painfully go through the IMF program. And the IMF program has put in measures, safeguards, that will ensure that we recover. So, for me, if the president comes to address the nation and painting a picture as if what is now discovered is something different. As a matter of fact, what is discovered now is far better than what the situation was that prompted us to go into the IMF program. And for the president to come and say that, the situation is even, no one could have been prepared for such a situation, basically telling us that he's not even prepared to handle the problem.
Perhaps what he knew was better than what he has seen.
Even not at the top echelon of decision making, I knew what the situation was.
Maybe you hid it from everybody.
I'm saying that the data on it was made public during the IMF negotiation. We all know, we discussed this data. We discussed the debt to GDP, which is a realistic measure of the debt situation. Because you cannot mention debt in absolute figures without putting it against your whole economy. That is one thing. The president also mentioned that, in fact, Article 67 tells us the state of the nation. But he comes to tell us that he's not ready with the real state of the nation yet. That two events would come before we don't know the real state of the economic dialogue that my senior brother and respected professor is part of. That it will take the economic dialogue and the statement by the finance minister for us to know the real in his will. And I quote him, two events will allow us to present the real, for emphasis my state of the nation, or state of Ghana's economic crisis to the people. Therefore, it means that ab initio, the president came to address us without knowing.
He's giving us an overview, but to be
without
fair,
knowing,
he's taking over the country. He's taking over the reins of
I am
government.
saying that the state of the nation address is to tell us where we are in real terms.
But he was unable to tell us.
But he was able to tell
exactly
us
where
exactly.
we are.
Again, it is okay to come and present data that paints the narrative you want to say, i.e., you went and picked inflation, that we didn't perform the target of 18%. But you did not tell the good people of Ghana that our target for growth was 4%, but we did 6%.
But we don't. Have those figures been concluded yet?
Those figures have been concluded and published. Where he got the 23%, he would have gotten the 6% of GDP growth there. You get the point? So if you are presenting the state of the nation, my reasonable expectation, and I agree very much with Professor Gachi, is that there must be portions that you paint the picture at it, no matter how difficult the opposition or the party going out of power will take it. You present it as it is. If there are places that you need to acknowledge where they have made some gains, you must make it. But if you present a picture that all is gloomy and you have dashed the hope of investors, that is not, in my candid opinion, that is not how a State of the Nation address should be, because it must inspire hope, it must inspire confidence. You must present the statistics that investors can look up to and still feel like it is still favorable for me to invest in country Ghana. But if you look at from the whole speech, promising that he was not going to engage in lamentation, but every single page there after is a lamentation of the situation that was bequeathed to him. Okay, he promises that you were not going to engage. You were going, some of which I find it difficult to even think why the president will say them. For instance, like my brother Bano, Dr. Bano mentioned, you said that you are drifting away from dependence on borrowing. When in every single day in the last 50 days, you borrow 1.1 billion Ghana cedi. Every single day, averagely.
From the domestic
From
market.
the domestic market. That means that the statement on the face of the fact is not tenable. The president go on to tell the good people of Ghana that he has to be, I get the impression that the president wanted to be honest to the good people of Ghana. And if I come to this chamber of parliament and I'm looking at the president and I'm thinking that, this president for the first time and with the opportunity to come back to power is going to deal with the national affairs honestly and with the utmost interest of the people without politics. I'll be surprised to hear the president mentioning figures about sinking sand fund as if that's the only fund that was bequeathed to them. You create a picture that $64,000 was left in the sinking fund. And the president conveniently left the end of year revenue of $3 billion that was left for them. He conveniently left money that probably would have been earned. And up to today, no one has updated the good people of Ghana how much was realized from the sweeping of accounts across board. Because that was money left in those accounts. But in any case, money does not necessarily sit with the central bank, central government or the Minister of Finance. Money every quarter realized are allocated to respective MMDAs. So if you come to even the central exchequer and you don't find money, and you find money in the respective accounts, that is still public funds. Whatever you use the money for, whatever amount you got, the good people of Ghana should have known in your State of Nation address, apart from the 64,000 Ghana cedi, dollars I got from the sinking fund, which is the cap in excess of the stabilization fund, I also got so amount from the sweeping of account. That was not disclosed to the good people of Ghana.
Maybe the finance minister will do that.
So that is where I'm saying that you don't put the cart before the horse. If you think that matters of the economy are issues that you would defer to the finance minister to give us comprehensively and conclusively the state of affairs, I will not fault the president. It is a rational thing to do as a president because you don't want to throw, but you don't create a perception without figures to back that perception. As a matter of fact, except the debt figure, which he did not even index to GDP, and juxtapose that with the situation we had before, except the inflation figure, there was no other relevant macroeconomic statistic. And also maybe the depreciation of the cedi. There was not any other macro-relevant statistics. He goes to talk about borrowing as if to say that, and what I found surprising was even how he impugned the IMF, that the IMF program did not even restrain the economic mismanagement. It is a spit on the face of the IMF because our IMF program is a performance-based program. That you are passed to get the next releases after some micro or structural benchmark and performance indicators have been met. The IMF has released about 1.2 billion of the 3 billion extended credit facility to Ghana. As late as December 2024, some 360 million was released by the IMF after satisfactory assessment of the government. Now you come and say that despite the IMF program, the government was still reckless. It means that you are impugning the very work the IMF has done upon which the country was passed and the money was released to the government of Ghana for budgetary support. So for me, despite the picture the president wanted to present, he actually did not make at least a good number of Ghanaians. I can't say majority because if his majority probably would have gone with the president. But he did not reflect on the minority, no matter how few the minority will be, their concerns about how a president must present the State of the Nation address.
I see. Great. Let me bring in Prof. So, Prof, so we've heard quite a bit. That the address was selective in terms of the indicators used, etc. The president could have presented a more rounded State of the Nation. He doesn't have to, for example, give the debt figure when he says, when that has not been properly indexed. He doesn't have to be selective, for example, in the accounts, sinking fund, when the others, we don't know. So generally, I mean, this is your first take. So your view on the State of the Nation, directly addressing the points that your colleagues have raised as well.
Okay, well, I'll just stand from where my brother, Dr. Kabiru, left off in terms of accusing the president of having exploited the IMF by the statement he made. I don't think that was very prudent because we're giving a State of the Nation's address. If there's anyone that has impugned the IMF, it is his previous government, who vowed and said that they were never going to go to the IMF, but ended up going there with a tail in between their legs and hackles raised with wagging tails. So where are we now to talk about who impugned the IMF? You impugned the IMF to the extent that to even have access to the tranches of loans that were to come in were being delayed. And these are tick box exercises. Nobody cracked a sweat in any part of any jurisdiction when they are under an IMF program to access such. But you had delays, and that is impugning the IMF. So if there's real or anything to talk about impugning the IMF, you exhibited that. So what the president basically did was to give the true State of the Nation's address. You're talking about sweeping accounts. I would cede some time off for my brother to tell us what the figure is, as far as maybe he knows something we don't know. Doc, what was in the sweeping account? What's the amount that President Mahama failed to mention?
But maybe
But I'm asking, you should tell us what it is. No, you seem to know something we don't know.
The point is that
you seem to know something we don't know.
What Dr. Bano said, that there are various accounts.
Yes, so
it is not just one account to pay debts from. So you deal with only one account, which is sinking debt, and create a picture as if that's the only money available.
That we do not know.
Let me give you an answer.
What year?
We had the Eurobond account. We had the T2 main account. We had money of about 300 million in excess of oversubscription of T-bills. These monies are definite and we can tell the amount. In the case of sweeping of accounts, every agency spends until such point that the directive was issued. It is only the governor of Ghana and no other person can tell the amount that was left in the sweeping account. It's only the governor of Ghana, and the president will be the only person. No, but not even unless, of course, respective agency can tell you how much we bequeath. But the total, the aggregate figure, it's only the president.
You put out something as though you know something that we don't know.
The point is making is the other accounts, but the president focused on one, and people have the impression that
but that's
was
important.
all that was
he's
in the
highlighting issues. And the State of the Nation's
million.
address is a clear highlight or headlight items of what is the true state of the nation.
But does it give a complete figure, a complete picture? That the other accounts you chose to deal with only one.
So you want him to go bit by bit and
not
measure
necessarily.
every account?
For example, to say that this is how much was left for payment of debt, so that you don't necessarily have to mention the accounts, so that we know that collectively or compositely, this is what was.
No, that's insignificant.
Really?
Yes, very insignificant. What are you talking about? That's insignificant.
Let's sit down. I'll come to you.
You come to you, bro. Yeah, but that's insignificant to the debate here and what we are having as far as the true state of the nation's economy is concerned. Right? You're talking about, I hear my brother talk about a country's population. Juxtaposing it with tax collection, a population of 34 million. 34 million active taxpayers. To have that conjecture. You talk about countries such as the US, another example of a US even borrows. Did the US go into the domestic debt exchange program? So these are the realities we should be talking about. We're talking about an overheated economy.
I think he mentioned the fact that it depends on what you use the borrowing for.
Yeah, what did they use?
What did he add?
What did they use the borrowing for?
What did he say was what they used?
What did they use the borrowing for?
That was there.
What did we use the borrowing for? That led us to even touching blue chip investments such as pensions. in any responsible jurisdiction, nobody goes after blue chip investments such as pensions. In any case, what led us to a domestic debt exchange program? My brother mentioned that we were at a cliff. What led us to the cliff?
COVID, RUO.
No, come on, Selorm. Don't be disingenuous about this.
But that's what we've
Right?
been told, and that's the reality.
What reality?
Because the claim is made that pre-COVID.
Yes,
we were
but even
okay.
pre-COVID, did you see the IMF report at where it pointed us to as an economy? There was a pre-COVID report from the IMF and the World Bank. All the Bretton Woods institution came out to a report and pointed to where our economy was headed for. So now, if we go, or we have inherited an overheated economy, we're not even a 1-year-old government. We're an 8-week-old government. And all of this is coming from, we have already borrowed X, Y, Z. What is the component of the debt? We need to spell that out. What has it been used for? If you look at the treasury bill market, one thing we're failing to realize is that it's just not a market for Ghanaians, because if you comb around the sub-region, right, it's a unique case we have in Ghana with treasury bills. So you have subscribers coming from the sub-region, Nigeria being one of the biggest points in time. So if you don't arrange this very well and give a signal to the market to really have a full attraction of it, where are we going to after inheriting such an overheated economy? Cocoa syndicated loans. Have we ever cracked a sweat at getting that? But under this regime, what happened? We struggled with it at the international market. Syndication was a problem. So what are we talking about? What did they do with ESLA as far as energy debts are concerned? Who created the sinking fund? So the activation of the sinking fund as an insurance measure was one of the apt instruments that the government could, given the current situation we find ourselves in. So if we're indeed talking about the true state of the economy, that is what was given to us by President John Dramani Mahama. And for me, I tend to have viewed a nationalistic perspective from where he came from. It had a national outlook in what it is. His embrace and confidence with which, right, he exuded to the good people of Ghana that I am not going to cancel free SHS. In and of itself, still tells you that there's a continuum in government policy and programs and interventions.
But free SHS will change in its form.
Well, the details would come. There is an educational forum ongoing, so that's not something we want to really jump.
Of course, we're not discussing free SHS at this segment.
No, I'm just talking about, we're discussing the State of Nations Address, and this is something we significantly.
We had put in.
It's valid to mention because it was part of the.
Yeah, it was part of what he mentioned.
The point I'm making is that it does appear.
Because my brother was saying he didn't really mention anything. His ability to even embrace the free SHS and say, look, I'm going to continue with it in and of itself.
But
to be free SHS.
I think when you have your 10, you have that, right? Can I have it?
The point I'm making is that the narrative appears that the government is taking a certain trajectory, shaping people's mind that you should be ready to make some contribution to the education of your children.
Well, but of course, no, it's not that, but don't turn the government's direction into what it has not explicitly stated. Right? But are you happy with the current form of free SHS? Obviously, no.
No, it could be better.
So it could be better. So whatever reforms are coming is to enhance it. Numeracy and literacy skills is very important. Quality of the students in terms of their welfare is key. What they eat matters. So we are talking about clear improvements of it and an overhaul of that. What is the quality of graduates we are churning out from free SHS? So these are things that we really need to look at as a government. So, but we have not said we're going to do A, B, C, D until a full government paper comes out of that. But what he explicitly stated at the State of the Nation's address is that I am going to embrace and continue with free SHS. I think that's significant, right? But to talk about preparing, I mean, my brother mentioned that the statements which he made was shying away. I want to put it mildly, like shying away investors from the economy. I think that right from when President Mahama won, he has been not on the spending of flying spree of borrowing, as Ken Ofori-Atta did, but he's been traveling around the world, putting in measures in place to actually call on investor confidence as far as government is concerned. I'll lay out some of the initiatives that have even been taken for an 8-week-old government. Right. You look at the setting up of the gold board and the speed at which it's going. Very significant feat as far as that is concerned. His commitment to activating the sinking fund, right? Where cash payment could be made, committing that to rate. Where kind payment could be, committing that to rate. Right. And also stating, which my brother is not so comfortable with, that $64,000 was a contribution that was
And I think
left.
there was 143 million CDs as well.
Yes.
We don't mention the CDs.
Oh,
You didn't
well,
mention
you see
the
this,
CDs,
but if you look at it in real terms, as in 64,000, that is less the price.
So the CD and then dollar.
Yeah, well, we can still
Yeah,
compare
yeah,
that, but it's significant to also note that that is less than the price of the wristwatch of a full government official who was at the national service that was being branded on social
the
media.
$64,000.
Yes. Richard Mill, you could look it up and see how much they cost and compare that figure to rates. So it is not just as an insignificant figure.
I see.
Right? So it tells you where these things are. So you look at all of these and look at cocoa, which is a critical sector, energy, which is a critical sector. I mean, we were at a near power crisis when we took over. Where are we today? And the real commitment to this. So for me, I think that the president and his team, and for that matter, the finance minister ought to be part of the back to say, okay, well, you've really done significantly well under an eight-week-old government. The fact is, Selorm, people keep saying that, oh, when it comes to domestic debt exchange program, nothing could have been done about it because it's a contract. Wasn't it a contract that was broken for us to be in the domestic debt exchange program in the first place? Right? So the real commitment to paying it off or defraying that is significant in and of itself. What my senior is leading, which is the economic dialogue or national economic dialogue, is one of the key indicators, actually, to embracing or attracting investors back into the economy. I mean, we have always touted homegrown solutions, which they boycotted in time past. Royal Sanchi, you remember, right? And went crisscross the length and breadth of the country on petrol-consuming V8s in the name of having town halls when they needed to go to the IMF. You remember all of that. So we are talking about these key critical matters as far as the economy is concerned. You can cherry pick figures from where you like. You could go into the Akufo era and come and compare it to that and ignore key variables such as time value of money, inflation at the time, rebasing of the economy, what have you. But the real contextualization of what we're talking about, right, is the actual state of the economy.
Very well.
Which was given by the president.
Very
and when
well.
we say, you tend to agree with my Dr. Kabiru on a point that I thought that you should.
I shouldn't
No,
have
I'm not
agreed.
saying. No,
Okay,
you should
okay.
have stayed neutral in illuminating.
Oh, I see.
What you said was that.
What did I say?
Yeah, what you said was that he has deferred the point to the finance minister.
I was in this
Okay.
position 1 year ago.
No, you should have deferred the point to the finance minister. Defer what point? When we talk about the true state of the nation's economy, right?
No, I think the point I made was
No.
that, I mean, he's just
No,
8
no, no.
weeks.
If it is,
He's just 8 weeks
But
old.
what I'm saying, if it's a second state of the nation's economy or third or fourth, it's different to a first.
Sure.
Right? A first is a dovetail of what he has inherited of the last 1
I
month.
think I made a point about
and a few
baseline,
weeks
yeah.
ago before getting into office.
Yeah.
So if you want to use that as a yardstick to say that XYZ should have been said, I think that is out of honesty that he kept to script on what the true state of the nation's economy is.
Okay, so but the point I was seeking to make also is that the true state of the nation should be inclusive of many more things.
Yeah, but the budget has not been read, and the
So that-
budget
so
is
the
a full
point-
frame. within
Exactly.
which
So the president
all
said
of
so,
this-
and I think that's a similar point.
So maybe you should probably look at a constitutional review of probably having a budget read before a true state of the nation's
Maybe.
address to be given.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I want to go to
of
the
that sort,
Abano,
rather than
but
pinning it on
I want to go to the Abano,
what
but
it is,
Prof had a simple point on to make about the accounts. Probably
Yes.
could just do that in 1 minute. So that
Yes, I think we have our consolidated fund.
yeah.
That's where all our monies go into. But it's for a particular reason why the Constitution provided for a sinking fund. And then the Public Financial Management Act also provided for the sinking fund. And even make the management of the sinking fund under the Controller and Accountant General. And also spelled out sources of money into the sinking fund, including budgetary allocation that could be approved by Parliament, and also investment income from the sinking fund itself. It's supposed to provide protection to creditors. It's supposed to let us portray ourselves as being serious in dealing with creditors when we go to borrow money. In fact, that can also moderate the interest rate that creditors charge us when we go to borrow money. So the sinking fund is a unique creation
Yeah.
that must be on it. But it's
kept active all the time.
And kept active all the time. So I believe that is what the president is focusing on. And he's saying that he's going to activate the sinking fund. What I will see is how that could be done, because servicing the sinking fund is very, very crucial, especially if we have some of the debt tied to the sinking fund. From what Dr. Kabiru was saying, it means that not all the debt are tied to the sinking fund. But those debts which are tied to the sinking fund, if you are not servicing the sinking fund, you are exposing
then you can't service those debts.
And then you are going to affect that will affect the credit deterioration level of the country, and that is not the good. But I also want to indicate that, for me, my observation has seen so far shows that there is a moderated level of risk to our market. There is hope that the market will be revived. You can see that, moderating the treasury bill market now. And the demeanor of the finance minister and the president and the things that they are doing so far should be continued. We shouldn't derail, because that is hope for the financial market within the short term. And that should be escalated to attract more goodwill to reduce that.
Very well. So, yes, I'll come. So, Doc, I want us to deal quickly with this ECG or energy sector thing. The President talks about ESLA, even though ESLA is inactive. ESLA has produced so much, but we talking about sinking fund. Debt has sunk us, or we've been sunk by the debt to the extent that there's some 70 billion outstanding and all of that. How crucial is the energy sector debt to the survival of the economy or to the health of the economy? And what critical steps do you think the president or the government can start implementing to ensure that we defray that debt? ESLA is there, maybe a few more things should happen, ECG, efficiency, etc.
Yeah, so the problem over the years with the energy sector has been the wastage in energy generation, one. That is the downstream. Now, then there is the upstream problem, which has got to do with the agreements that were signed by my good friends, my senior brother's government, right? The IPPs, right? Some of the draconian
agreement already.
Which agreement?
No,
I'm talking about the part one, your part one government, not now.
No, which agreement?
No, so I'm talking about the take-up the energy power purchasing agreement that was signed.
You're so happy to dig history, don't you? To make a point in cherry-picking comparisons.
That is an amazing revelation. So of course, that is where the problem stems from. For example, if you take a look into history, if you look at examples of countries that have signed power purchase agreements, if you take a critical example like Egypt, the similar time that we were signing an agreement that we were paying about 2.02 million megawatt per energy, Egypt were paying something around 770,000 USD, right? So that has been the bane of the Ghanaian energy problem. Then comes the wastage within the transmission, and at the same time, when at the point of distribution to households, when ECG is supposed to recover energy that has been supplied to households. But quickly, my senior brother also made reference to ESLA and asked what has ESLA been used for over the years. Now, if you look at the Institute of Fiscal Policy, as at the end of 2016, the Institute of Fiscal Policy actually published the total debt that within the downstream, when you take ECG, when you take VRA, when you take GRIDCO, when you take TOR, the total debt that these state-owned institutions had accumulated. In fact, I wouldn't want to bore with 2015 because I want to focus on 2016.
Would you classify VRA downstream?
Of course, so if you look at...
Sorry? The question is it classifying VRA as downstream?
Yes.
No. So I'm looking at the state-owned enterprises.
Yeah. But you mentioned that if you classify downstream, that's why I'm asking for clarity.
Yeah, the state-owned enterprises, of course. Okay. So if you look at this debt, now in 2016, at the year ending of 2016, the total debt that was owed by ECG was 9.452 billion. And this is the Institute of Fiscal Policy document. Now, that is page 7 categorical of this publication that you find this documentation. Now, if you go to VRA, VRA owed an amount of 9.5 billion. If you go to Gridco owed an amount of 1.147 billion. If you go to Tema Oil Refinery, TOR, there was an amount of 1.695 billion. So the total energy sector debt as at the end of 2016 was 21.864 billion. Now, this is in Ghana cedis. Now, let's convert to dollars. Now, if you divide the exchange rate of at that time, let's even assume that we are using a flat rate of 4 cedis to a dollar. That translates to about 4.5 billion American dollars. So, of course, the president couldn't have exonerated himself from telling the Ghanaians that he isn't one of the reasons that we have the energy sector debt as we see it to be.
But they introduced ESLA. That's why they
introduced. Of course, so that's why I'm coming into
brought in excess capacity.
Yes, I'm talking about ESLA. I mean, of course. So I gave you, of course, I gave you the state-owned institutions, the debt that they owed. Now today, if my big brother here will be very honest and frank with me, how much is the TOR debt? Can you be bold enough to tell us how much TOR debt that exists today as we sit in this studio?
But do you know the figure?
You know, if you know the
TOR
figure, tell us.
Because I know that TOR's debt has been paid off by using the ESLA PLC subscriptions. So clearly, we cannot sit here and assume.
But TOR is been idle.
I mean, in 2016, what was TOR doing, my brother? I mean, you are a good moderator. You should tell me this. What was TOR doing in 2016? So how come that they still owed a debt of about 1.6 billion?
But that was legacy. Was it just 2016? It was something which came from
Of course. So that's what I'm saying. That is why I'm making the point that if you sit here and question what has been the update of ESLA, and I'm trying to say that ESLA has been used to settle the same legacy debt that the MPP did not contribute to. That is the point I am making. So definitely, you cannot sit here and assume that nothing has been done in terms of funds that has been accumulated in ESLA.
To the legacy.
So that is very, very important that we clear that point. Then we go again to this issue of sinking fund. And for me, I mean, and I want to be clear here. See, yes, we talk about that. This is a constitutionally mandated clause. But if you read the Constitution, what does the Constitution say? Does it say shall?
No. Statutory, no constitution.
Sorry, statutory. Does it say shall or does it say may? That is also another thing you want for discussion.
You really want to play with this semantics?
No, it's not about this semantics.
You want to play with this
from then dealing with energy.
It is part of our financial management
but the point is,
so that
is it
cannot
a
be
shall
questioned.
or is it a may?
But if it is not mandatory,
Exactly, that is the point. You cannot.
It is from the Constitution, and it is also captured as one of the tools of debt management in the public financial management.
That is not the only tool. That is not the only tool.
So you cannot run away.
That is not the only tool. But it's critical that we establish that point. Is it a shall or is it a may?
It's a tool that is respected in the investment environment.
The point is that it is a tool that is supposed to use in managing our debt and providing certainty for our investors. But that's not the only tool.
Exactly.
There is also the Eurobond proceed account, where we borrow from the Eurobond and then we use it to provide buffer to pay them.
Exactly.
There is also the government of main account, which is also used for government of Ghana, especially domestic borrowing. But to the extent that ESLA was also provided, one could have argued that let some money be in it, use it as well. But the fact that a government hasn't used it doesn't also mean it has violated the law.
Thank you.
That's the point.
So that's the point I'm trying to establish. Now, let me go on further. Now, the president also talks about leaving behind, is it some $250 million or $300 million in the in the second part when he left office in 2016. The question that we need to interrogate is where did that money come from? It's very, very important. Now, that money was part of the Eurobond subscription that was bid, I think, in 2015 or 2016, thereabout. It was part of that money that was deposited in the sinking fund. Now, let's be rational here.
That was the money they had allocated for the payment of the Akufo-Addo Eurobond.
So they borrowed that money. So the point I want to...
No, let me get that point. you are mentioning Kufuor's here. So
No, I mean, what I
No,
mean
the
is
Eurobond that Kufuor procured in
2007,
2017 October.
that was going to be retired in 10
it was
years.
going to mature in
no,
2017.
Kufuor procured the Eurobond in 2007.
Yes, but it was
2007.
maturing
For
in
10 years.
2017.
10 years,
Yes.
so 2017.
So the sinking fund was created in 2014, and buy back sinking fund, and buy back a portion of the 750 million, to give some hope to investors that money will be paid, and that money was indeed paid from the sinking fund in I think in April 2017.
Prof, Prof,
I think it's the same point.
there's the same point I'm making.
Yeah.
That where did that money come from? That is the point I want to
I
establish.
just told you the allocations.
Yes.
No, it's not about the
money.
allocation. I'm talking about the source of the money.
Doesn't matter where
It matters. It matters very. It matters. It
Why?
matters because you see, if you are a government and you go to borrow and you put in a sinking fund, okay, to pay debt, okay, rationally, you wouldn't expect any subsequent government that comes to follow your step by also going to the same international financial market, go and borrow. For example, let me give you an example.
That is part of the debt
Exactly.
profiling.
But that didn't buy you from no borrowing.
Yes.
Not borrow them. They're not coming.
Investors'
So that's what I'm saying. That
We
it is-
borrow to refinance
Of
the
course,
material.
of course.
And then you
Definitely.
borrow to
And
do
that
other
gives
stuff.
investors confidence. That
Yeah,
is
so
the
we are
same
talking
idea.
about that. This was an insurance cover. That is important.
Yes.
It was an insurance cover.
Let him land. I think he has to leave actually, but let him land.
Yes.
You see, me too.
I wouldn't. If I was advising
I have to
government,
finish my
okay,
main part.
Yes.
I wouldn't go to the Eurobond and borrow at a rate of 10.75%. Just to come and dump a part of it in a sinking fund to service debt. I wouldn't do that. I am saying I wouldn't do that. I'm not saying that any other person cannot do that. In fact, one of the problems I had with His Excellency President Dramani Mahama's first government was the rate at which he was borrowing in terms of the coupon rate. That is one of the problems I
Because
had.
of the rate.
The rate. You see, it is very, very important when you are borrowing. Three very important things. The first most important thing is what the money is being used for. So that the money will be able to generate over the years to be able to service that loan when it is due. So it's very, very important. The second most important thing that a lot of people seem to overlook is what we call the tenor. You see, the NDC was actually borrowing at a short period of time. But the rate, the coupon rate of which they were also subscribing these loans were very high. For example, if you look at October 2015, the NDC went to raise a $1 billion bond at a coupon rate of about 10.75%. In fact, that was one of the highest rates within the sub-region at that time. If you compare it to Oforiatta's coupon rate, that the NDC had bastardized over the years. The highest coupon rate that Oforiatta procured a loan of $1 billion was in March 2019, which was 8.95. But however, what is instructive to note here is that the tenor of this coupon was 31 years. Very important. But you cannot say the same about the NDC. So in terms of debt management and debt profiling, one of the reasons why as a country we even find ourselves in this crisis that we find ourselves today is because of the short-term borrowing that the NDC was borrowing, but at a very high coupon rate. Of which this
After 8 years, the ripple effect is still in the economy.
Why not?
No.
I mean, for example,
I
let me give you
wanted to land and we take a break.
let me give you an example. I mean, for me, I will not say when you have your turn. I will answer you. I will answer you fair and square.
No, just-
For example,
just-
go ahead.
no, I would answer him. For example, in 2016, September 2016, you issued a $750 million coupon, okay, at a rate of 9.25%. In fact, one of the highest, aside what you issued in 2014. And it had a tenor of 6 years. Clearly, who would do this?
But what has been the
now
ripple
let me
effect
come
of
to
all
the
this?
management
Who
of
went
this.
into domestic
I actually want to take a break, but
These are technical finance issues, so we need to correct.
Wait, so
we need to correct.
let Prof. Doc,
You see,
Doc, let Prof provide some information.
Let me.
So what has this resulted?
we need to-
Mahama got into a domestic
we need-
debt
we need to-
program.
No, no,
I mean, I'm not talking about domestic
No, I'm
debt exchange
asking, did
program.
Mahama get into a domestic
that
debt
is not what I'm talking about. I am just trying to set
Guys,
the
Mahama go into
your microphones are Prof. Doc.
I think we
Interesting.
need to let them,
97.3 City FM. We're just having some difficulty here in terms of, but I will just make Prof. Gachi throw some light on the figures that Dr. Bano has mentioned. Then he will land. Then we take a break.
I think you know that it's a trite knowledge that when you are going for longer term borrowing, the rates are lower.
Yes.
And when you are going for shorter term,
The rates are higher.
the rate are
I think his point is why do
But
you
that
go
is
for
the
shorter
point I am
term?
making.
Why do you go for
That's
shorter
the point
term?
I'm making.
You go to you see,
This is the Eurobond
before you
Prof.
enter, wait,
Let
me explain. Let me
I
explain.
made was on the Eurobond.
Yes, you
That
see-
both
No,
governments
you will
have
come,
to sign.
you will
Yes.
come back.
Very
It's
important.
also track
Yeah.
knowledge, and when you're going to the debt market, the credit rating you have will determine the kind of rate you get. We do agree. At that time, the economy was in some turbulence, and you are going into the market at that time. That will reflect on the rate. Again, when you take from 2017 thereabout, there is a different momentum in the market. Rates have gone down. So what you are saying that Oforiatta had a better rate than the NDC
Yeah,
time
it's-
was not true because they also started from a different level of rate profile of the market.
Very good.
Very good.
In 2021 post-COVID.
Very well. Let
So if you do that, you are not giving
I get the point. Let him land.
So that is when you see the rate
see-
of
we
the
see-
bond.
So the factors are different.
Yes, factors are different.
Let's take that.
my
So
friend,
you see
this
the
is
rate of
very
the bond.
market rates at the
Whose
time.
duty
Yes.
is it?
Also
Whose
higher.
duty is it to manage the economy so that we reach
No, but
it? Whose
in
duty
the
is it?
prevailing market
but
conditions
I
are
am
different.
giving you instances of
But
post 2017,
in any
post
case, in
2020.
2016,
let's
did
give
we
it a
get a
minute.
domestic debt exchange program?
No, we
And
didn't.
post
Let's give him a minute.
Did
We
we
didn't.
go to IMF?
No, let him land. I just want Dr. Bana to land.
Don't miss out my
Let
point
him
for me.
finish.
Let him land.
Let
Yeah.
it finish. But the point we are making should be that we shouldn't limit it to domestic debt exchange program. Domestic debt exchange program is accumulation of a problem piled on the economy over time.
Over time, yes.
It is not just that an event that happened
Happened once.
in a
So
year.
you are saying that-
No, I'm not
It-
saying you
it's a
cause. I'm not saying you
problem.
cause.
It's
I'm
not
not.
a
But I'm
problem.
just saying that when we want to
It's
do
very
analysis,
important.
when we want to do
So we
analysis,
can crack it all
you
down.
have to look at the pile of events
I just want Dr.
that
Bana
lead to the climax of a
Doc,
program.
I'm happy to have that engagement.
Doc, so just wrap up for me.
Yeah, so thank you. So that is to move away. I mean, I want to move away from all these conversations. And I wanted to paint the picture clearer to the average Ghanaian who is watching us, so that the impression is not created that is because Akufo-Addo came into office in 2017, Akufo-Addo accumulated debt from 2017 to 2024. That is why Ghana found itself in the crisis that we found in. That is the first point that I wanted
But
to establish.
Akufo-Addo clearly had a role he played.
Of course, that's why I gave you the
catalyzing
that
role.
is why I gave you the profile.
And I mean, to be fair to the facts as well,
That's why I gave you the profile
rate
of the public
borrowing
debt.
increased within that period.
Of course. So let me give you the profile of the debt. And that's why my friend says I love history. I love history so much. You see, like if you look at
When it favors you.
Of course. I mean, I'm giving you the
You
history.
cherry pick.
I'm not cherry picking. Of course, I mean, you can correct me if you feel the data I'm providing is
Focus
false.
on me.
So you see, that's why I gave you the debt profile. In 2001, our total debt stood at around 7 billion. That was what former president, the late President Jerry John Rawlings bequeathed to President Kufuor. By 2000, yes, that was a total public debt. In 2008, when President Kufuor was leaving office and handing over power, our total this is in US dollars, please, not Ghana cedis. The figures I'm quoting are all in US dollars.
But the context is,
No,
we are
in
debt
terms
forgiveness
of-
and are HIPIC.
No, very important. No. You see, you are talking about what each and every government has added to the public debt. It's very important. I mean, of course, we all know the time value of money.
Not even the time
we
value
need to
of
take
money.
account
There
of
was
the debt
HIPIC.
forgiveness.
No, there was HIPIC.
Yes.
Right,
Okay,
there
of
was
course.
redenomination
Let
of
me
the currencies,
jump
among
post
other
Kufuor.
factors. So if you
Let me
add
jump
all
post
of that, you are
Kufuor.
not doing
Let me jump
justice to
post
the
Kufuor.
topic.
Let me compare NDC 1 to MPP2. Okay?
That's not what we're doing.
That's
here.
not what we're doing here. It's not what we're doing.
I wanted.
You made a point.
I made a point, and it's building on the depth.
You don't want me to. No, is it the case that people are not comfortable? No, it's very important. You are the moderator here. I was making a point. I was making a point that it's not the case that Akufo-Addo became president, and then he accumulated debt within 2017.
That led to the DDEP.
Or any other issue that we may have.
Crisis.
Yes.
Your point is that it was cumulative.
It is cumulative, of which President John Dramani Mahama
also contributed,
and President J.E. Mills contributed. No, just that government. I want to specify their contribution.
But it's cumulative, so you can't just.
I am breaking it down for people to know what each and everyone has.
We don't have the time for it.
Of course, you made a point.
No,
You made a point that Akufo-Addo exacerbated it.
Yes, there was Kufo.
There was Kufo.
There was Mills. There was
Mahama. And then there was Akufo-Addo.
Yeah, so don't take out Kufo.
Excellent. So all this, including the first president and the Fourth Republic, they are all have party to play in the crisis that we are discussing.
But there was an acceleration.
Of course.
Of the debt under Akufo-Addo. Do you agree?
No, that is not true. It is not true because in real terms, the total debt accumulated under Akufo-Addo is $18.7 billion today, as we sit here. The total debt accumulated between John Evans Atamils and John Dramani Mahama was $21.13 billion.
So why are you adding John Mahama and John Evans?
Oh
my God, come on.
What kind of...
All right,
you are falling for this.
Let me
It's 8 years. I want to take a break now. Guys, you guys should take a sip of the water you have on the table. This is the big issue, 97.3 City FM. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva cocktail and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved. Curious about what's happening beyond your borders? Beyond Borders takes you there. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., join Caleb Kudo as he explores the stories that shape our world, connecting you with Ghanaians in other cultures and seeing the world through their eyes.
So we've learned one thing: you leave your shoes outside. Wow.
Tuesdays, I won't go to Ghana dressed in a Lacoste.
As director of operations.
From international politics to the human stories that define nations, Beyond Borders brings you a fresh perspective of Ghanaians around the world, one conversation at a time. Beyond Borders with Caleb Kuda airs Wednesdays at 7 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV.
Politics meets power, where the tough questions are asked. Welcome to Face to Face. Every Tuesday at 9 p.m., join Umaru Sanda Amadou as he takes you face to face with the key players shaping the future of our nation.
I lost over $10 million at the trade fair.
You had a fight with the management of trade fair?
I don't have a fight with them. I just deplore the way they went about what they did.
Let's talk about the chief prosecutor of the state at the time that you were being prosecuted, Godfrey Yeboah-Dame, the Attorney General.
Yes. I think he was directed to jail us.
By who?
By the system.
Boko has been a failure for your government, though.
Can't be a failure.
You have not solved it.
No, you are not praising them, the previous government for solving it, which was even a more difficult case. quite obvious that from these votes, the people felt that let's just let you go.
So they were disappointed
in us.
You are essentially the worst government in the Fourth Republic.
I don't know how you are doing that. Based on the indicators.
Yes, based on the number of people who refuse to come and vote for you.
If that is your analysis, then why not?
No filter, no boundaries, just the truth behind the headlines. Deep, bold, and unflinching. Face to Face with Umaru Sanda Amadou airs on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV, where politics gets real.
You're welcome back. This is The Big Issue on 97.3 City FM on Channel 1 Television, also on our socials. We've been looking at the President's State of the Nation address, whether indeed that was a true reflection of the nation. Let me also point out that the MPP have just issued a statement saying that in the coming week or so, they will present what they call the real state of the nation. That they said will be presented by Osahini Alexander Afenyomakin, who is the leader of the party in Parliament. So we look forward to that. But in the meantime, we've just been looking at some of the things that the President has said, looking at the debt and a few other things. Some of your messages that have come through to us. Prince Henry Nkofuri says, good morning, Selorm. Is the MPP not aware that Ghana's debt, which was about 122 billion cedis, of which they described the NDC government led by John Mahama as incompetent, has ballooned to over 700 billion in 8 years. So why is Stika saying John Mahama didn't give the true state of the nation? Okay, so you say the future is pregnant and that we must support John Mahama to give us the Ghana we desire. Skelly says, good morning, Selorm. It's unfortunate these MPP folks don't seem to be learning anything from the unprecedented defeat they've just been dealt, which was the voice of Ghanaians telling them enough was enough. They should return to the bush. They rather keep going about pathetically trying to give explanations that don't make any sense. Ghanaians are not fools, and that these futile attempts to throw dust in people's eyes will rather make us more angry and keep them in a position for a very long time, you say. This one from Chris in Ashalibuchi says, Selorm, those who have created this economic mess and applauded the Adonoo administration for investing $58 million on the most useless hole called Cathedral have the guts to criticize John Mahama for cleaning up the mess. What a shame. The sins they have committed are still fresh in our minds. They should better keep mute for at least 2 years. This is from Chris in Ashalibuchi. Guess who is in the studio now? Franklin Kujo just walked into the studio. We missed him for the past 2 weeks or so. He's been AWOL. Franklin, good to have you. Welcome back to the studio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great. Nice one. All right, so we've been looking at the debt, we've been looking at other issues. Now, President Mahama, of course, we've known it in his campaign, etc., and part of the 120-day social contract with the people. He says he will do a number of things. One was the Education Forum, which is currently ongoing. Another is a national economic dialogue, which we understand will help us position the country properly, understand where we stand economically, and then chart a course into the future. Indeed, when a similar thing was done in 2015 or so at Senchi, the MPP boycotted it. This time around, he extended an invitation specially to them that they should come, they shouldn't boycott it, they should come. So we sit down as a people to chart a common course. One of the key persons on the committee putting together the National Economic Dialogue is Professor John Gachi, who is in studio here. Let's begin the discussion. Let's restart the discussion from that point. Prof, so the National Economic Dialogue, we're hoping to begin that when? On the 3rd?
On the 3rd and 4th of March.
Okay, so what's next week? So what is the terms of reference of your committee? What are you really supposed to be doing?
So we are supposed to plan for the dialogue to take place. We're supposed to look for those who are supposed to chair various thematic areas, those who present technical papers, and those who will be in the various thematic areas for deliberations, and then we're supposed to select the rapporteurs who will give summary of what are transpired during the various thematic areas, and that will feed into the final report to the President of the Republic. So that's what we have been doing. We are also supposed to select the date, which we have done in consultation with the presidency. We are supposed to select people to participate in the plenary session, the opening and the closing session, which we have done. And in addition to that, we know it's not possible for us to bring all Ghanaians who are interested to participate to the Accra International Conference Center. Therefore, we are going to telecast the event live on television and other social media platforms and give opportunity to Ghanaians who want to contribute one way or the other to do so, so that we can keep an inclusive engagement. So the program will start from 8 a.m. With arrival of guests. Then at 9 a.m., the chairman of the planning committee, Dr. Ishmael Yamson, will give a welcome address, followed by Dr. K.Y. Amwaku, founder and president of African Center for Economic Transformation, who will give some setting the scene, a short overview as to what has happened in the last decade and where we should be going as a country. Then after that, we'll have the finance minister present the state of the Ghanaian economy. So he may be giving us more details about the state of the Ghanaian economy. After his presentation, we shall have a keynote address from the President of the Republic of Ghana. Then after the presentation of the keynote address by the President, we shall have a short break and then break into our thematic areas. We have 6 thematic areas. We have restoring macroeconomic stability, and that since the program is national in character, we are happy to have Dr. Paul Akwa, the former governor of the Bank of Ghana, to chair that session, and other people like Leslie Mensah will be presenting during the session. And then we have growth with debt. Growth with debt is a concept that we are going to be following growth, but we are conscious about diversification.
Growth with debt.
Yeah,
That's
we are conscious about diversification, conscious about export expansion, conscious about productivity issues, and then we are also conscious about integrating the use of technology in society and in businesses across board and in government to bring about efficiency and also focus on human capital development of the country. Then the next section will focus on private sector-led growth. Here, a lot of issues will be discussed, including the tax environment for private sector, including why the private sector is not taking advantage of the PPP arrangement that we have promulgated into law in 2020. It was meant to galvanize infrastructure development with the help of the private sector, but that is not upscale. Those things will come on board. What the private sector could do to increase participation in delivery to the public and then influencing production, industrialization, etc. So those are the issues that will be discussed here. Then,
so how many days is it?
2 days. 2 days. Then we will also look at infrastructure development, and we are also happy that over here, Mr. Felix Addo will be chairing, and lawyer David Ofosu-Dorte will be a presenter. Then we go to structural and policy reform that will also include regulatory reforms. Over there will be chaired by Dr. Keke Sapon, and then Dr. Elikplim Apotogbo will be a presenter there. And then we come to restoring good governance and combating corruption. These issues will cover a lot of issues that are recently a problem for the country. And over here, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete will be chairing. And Franklin Kujo will be one of the presenters.
Oh, I see.
So what we have done is that what we have done is that we have a number of personalities under each thematic areas who will support the chairperson and the presenters in engaging in the discussion. People from academia, people from industry, policy stage, etc. Are going to be part.
So I see the list you've mentioned. How inclusive is this really? I mean, in terms of political party representation, have you extended invitation to other political parties and all key institutions?
Yes. If you hear some people, you may be assigning them to political party, but they are not assigned to political parties.
So KK Sapon, for example, it's not there.
It's not assigned for
Polakwa, all of those guys. They are there on their own merit.
Yes, they are on their own merit. But the political parties have been given invitations.
So what would they come and do? To present or just to listen?
They will listen, they participate in the discussions.
In the discussion.
Okay. So all political parties are being invited.
Great. The former deputy, former Minister for State at the Finance Ministry, Abena Osei Asari, gave a short response to the President's State of the Nation address. She had a paragraph on the National Economic Dialogue. She says, serious engagement of political window dressing. That in keeping with its over-reliance on committees and dialogues, in place of decisive action, that's doing some shade there, but in place of decisive action, the government has called for a National Economic Dialogue. It is, however, greatly doubtful that this was made genuinely and in good faith. The President is seeking to procure a rubber stamp for his predetermined programs while avoiding responsibility. More importantly, the President was elected based on a manifesto that ought to have been thoroughly thought through. Instead of resorting to endless committees, commissions, and dialogues, he should get down to implementing the policies he campaigned on. Governance is about leadership and execution, not deferring responsibility through unnecessary consultations. So yes, if you've won an election, you won an election with a program, why won't you just go ahead and implement that? Why will you need all of these things? I mean, wasting time perhaps. I mean, just go ahead and implement your program. Why do we need all of these things?
Well, I think that question was directed to the President.
Yes,
but I can answer.
Okay.
You see, political parties have different ideologies. And the ideology of the MPP definitely does not favor that kind of, that level of dialogue.
Okay.
We have seen it in the way they design their manifesto.
He's an MPP person.
No, he's speaking as a committee member.
Yeah,
the question if he's
but the good thing is that if you read chapter 6 of our constitution, all ideological shades are accommodated in managing the economy.
Directive principles.
Yes. So that is the context within which this should be appreciated. So even if your ideology does not allow you to engage in comprehensive dialogue, it provides you a platform to come and contribute, and that is nation building. In fact, we have a challenge in the country where people don't even believe that we should be governed by manifestos. We should be governed by a long-term national development program, where we have not had agreement on one yet. So there is a need for us to congregate, especially when you are dealing with a crisis of the nature we are talking about. It is only proper that you congregate people of different political background, different ideological schools, to come together to debate and prove a solution to some of the problems we have. So it is not about taking away the fact that you have won an election on the back of a 24-hour economy. You are not going to throw away the 24-hour economy. You are not going to throw away the fact that you want to refine the way we grant exemptions in the country. You are not going to take away the fact that you want to strengthen the debt management office in debt management. No, those things will be there. But we know that we have a debilitating situation regarding our fiscal and the macroeconomic environment. What do we do to restore and sustain it? That is the essence.
I see. Let me speak to Franklin. Franklin, once again, welcome to the program. I noted that you are speaking at one of the events. But how sure are we that this will not be a rubber stamp kind of dialogue. I mean, government wants to do something. Government wants to put it in the mouth of a group of people to say that, okay, once the group has said this, this is what we will do.
I think I need to provide that answer.
Okay,
because the instrument that put us in place gave us that assurance that the president is willing to be guided by the recommendations of the work of the committee, and for that matter, the dialogue. So that commitment has been made, and the commitment has also been made at the presentation of the Sona. And then what we have done is that during day one, there is a session we call the high-level dialogue, where some ministers in charge of communication, agri, so we call it the productive sector of the economy. Those ministers will be given platform to give us their takeaway that is going to influence their sectors, and then they have opportunity to ask questions to the presenters and then the chairpersons and the people who participate in the various sections for clarity. And if they also have something to add, they will add it. They will take questions from the public and the rest, so that it is very clear what have been agreed on to influence their decision.
I see.
So there is high commitment to, in fact, there is some people who are even suggesting should we publish the report so that when it's implemented, the government has a duty to account to the people of Ghana that this and that was agreed upon at the dialogue, and we have implemented it. This is the result. So these are the commitment levels that have been assigned.
I see. Franklin, same question. Your answer may differ a bit, but take responsibility for. I mean, you've won an election. Go ahead, do it. Why do all of these? Because if you want a certain outcome, you can do so by the selection of the people you put together to discuss the program. It's the same. It's happened in even the judiciary. When you want a certain outcome, you know the people to put together to discuss and to arrive at a certain conclusion, to give validity to your thoughts or what you want to do. Is that not a similar thing we are seeing?
Well, I mean, a part of me somehow would have suggested that if you see a snake, just kill it and don't set up a committee.
Exactly, you know.
As we know, we have a lot of challenges in the economy right now, and we all know the issues. But you see, there's every wisdom in trying to, should I call it, assemble people from different shades of, different parts of the country, different shades of opinion, in order to deal with this hard-headed problem, which I call a cyclical, if you like, fiscal indiscipline that we face. And don't forget that the last time a dialogue like this was broached, this was the Senchi thing, right? And that was actually what fed into the homegrown policy, which ultimately fed into the IMF program. And I think, by and large, the IMF program provided certain strictures or structures that we needed to follow. Unfortunately, when our friends came to power, they sort of managed to skirt around the issues and then somehow derailed. There are a few things that should have been done structurally. I think about 11 of the structural reforms that came out of the Senchi, by the way, which fed into the IMF deal. Only 3 of them had been, actually 2.5 of them had been attained by the time the MPP decided that, look, we want to get out of this thing by 2018, 2019, we're already out. Don't forget there was, I think they asked a little, was there an extension? Yeah. And by that time, most of the structural reforms we suggested that should have taken place had not been attained. On the back of that, they promised very interesting things. In fact, they promised a holistic, what I call a public sector reform agenda, which is something I'll come to briefly. And on the back of that, they suggested that if you reform the public sector, which is this behemoth, which is basically wasting, we will definitely fix a few issues. And that one, we're going to, for instance, produce close to about 1 million barrels of oil a day. They also they said, there's something else they said, but essentially saying that, look, we want to get out of this deal. It's too limiting. We think we found the magic wand, but on the back of that, we'll do ABCD, especially public sector reforms and all of that. Unfortunately, the only real public sector reform that took place was only when my good friend, former Finance Minister Safo Mafo, actually just edited the policy on public sector reform that had been prepared by the NDC. But after he was given a lot of, I think, I've forgotten how much it was given, but it got a lot of money to purchase car and all of that. But there was no significant reform. And so for me, I think it is important that these questions are asked, but at the same time, there's a learning curve, there's a history. And you see, because the government at the time probably did not respect what public sector reforms actually meant, you could see all the problems they had. All the problems they had in the administration were mostly related to discordant, how should I say, what's the word I want to use? I mean, everybody was just doing what they wanted, right? It was clear the president himself, the second term, he was just aloof. He was just not interested in understanding how things were going to interplay, whether people were procuring, excuse my language, useless machines in order to fix telecom, so-called telecom theft. I mean, come on. Or they were buying multi-million-dollar, should I call it, I don't know, but there were all kinds of procurement problems that we had. All of these issues, including the malgovernance, and the fact that even at the finance ministry, they were entertaining thoughts of floating a $50 billion bond at some point. You know, and to think that all of these were not in sync with common practices of prudent management, you ask yourself, what exactly happened? So for me, I think if they had had the benefit of probably just focusing on what the IMF, should I call it, deal suggested, or indeed the fact that there was some sort of a structure that was proposed at the Century Forum, I think maybe we would not have gotten ourselves into the carnage we got ourselves into. So there's every sense in saying that, look, I'm not saying that because I'm part of the committee, so I'm part of this forum, because of that it is very useful. It is really useful because, as I said, at this forum, people, of all the people that have been invited, I'm sure people will come with saying, look, there are things previous administrations have done in the past, really including you, John Mahama, the NDC, you've done certain things in the past. We know some of these things, but we think this time around, take this path. I, for instance, want to probably, all I want to say at that forum, when it comes to the issues of resetting governance and probably fixing corruption, I'm not going to recount so many of the problems we've had. Obviously, we know all of them. I'll probably be asking myself, how do we fix this issue of corruption, which largely is a function of the public service or public sector, which is thoroughly malfunctioning at this stage? Is it an incentive structure? Maybe that's where I'm going to come from. Maybe it's time for us to look at the issues of stewardship rather than having all these conversations about control. So I'm going to look at the control aspect of our public financial management, which unfortunately doesn't seem to yield results. Maybe we are trying something differently. You know, the reason I'm saying this is simple. If you look at all the public financial management systems we've had, I mean, all the interventions we've had so many crises. Almost all these crises are related to finance. Debt crisis, power crisis. We had 2 power crises by the from the year 2000. What's it called? The fiscal crisis. As a fiscal crisis, it's like a daily pill. And we've had all these crises. And when you go and look exactly at the structure, all the interventions we are making, almost all of them suggest, plan properly, budget execution, budget planning, budget execution, then you do audits, then you go, so there is a cycle. Almost all the elements of sensible management, prudent management are all in there. But why are we not having the results we want? Is it the people? Is it the system that is delivering this, should I call it this, basically, is it the system or is the people who are actually the problem, the civil service and all of that? And I seriously think that maybe it's time to look at the fact that, well, maybe civil servants are not probably paid well enough. Probably want to first of all, rationalize the sector, make sure that not so many of them get recruited, so that we can probably pay well. Look, was it last year? I saw a circular from the Singaporean government. And there was a minister for, forgotten her name, but there was this minister, something for reform. There's something called Flexi Growth. And if you look carefully, they just proposed that, look, this year, from beginning this year, January, they're going to give a blanket check of about $350 to civil servants, but it's graduated, $350, $450, $500. And there are various items you could use that to procure. So your service, your wages are taken care of. There's some sort of, you have some liberty to do maybe courses here and there, all because the Singaporean model essentially talks about building the public sector in such a way that they had the best, and so the results are always guaranteed. I mean, don't forget, I think 2018, they had a budget surplus of over, I've forgotten the entire figure, but almost everyone got about $300, every Singaporean got $300 back into their pay. So there are various means of, should I call it, generating response and probably eliminating waste that we can look at. So I'm not going to go with a gavel and say, fix the office of special prosecutor, do this, they should all work together. I think we've done so many of these things, and it's really annoying. Whatever, for all these institutions, look at the number of people who actually unearth corruption issues. There are young people from the fourth estate who actually take trotro to work, and so we spend money to do all this. So maybe the incentive structure should change. You want to incentivize Ghanaians to say, okay, look, if you hear something, say something, but you get a reward. I wasn't particularly pleased when certain advertisements were made concerning people who were fugitives or whatever, and there was no money attached to it, because I wouldn't be motivated to go look for people who are absconded. I'm talking about the EOCOs, they have this fugitives list. You need to put a reward there, and I suspect that, anyway, at the risk of telling you all that I'm going to say on Monday, I want to say that it is really useful, and I think everybody there is encouraged to come thinking outside of the box, because we can't continue. Look, if you don't do that, maybe one more point I'd like to make. None of these interventions the president wants to undertake, the 24-hour economy, and I've asked questions concerning that, by the way, the modeling processes, the first year, second year, what exactly do you want to do? What are the alternatives? All of this $10 billion infrastructure fund, you raise the money and before you realize people have other ideas. So we need to look at things from different perspectives. So I think it's a useful thing. And to suggest that, Abuna, by the way, I'm surprised. As I said, if the president is President Adonoo was minded, he never reshuffled once, he probably just once, some very little reshuffle.
When they were running for
and then also the fact that he was just doggedly uninterested in anything that was a change course for the better, and the results are what we are. And he was stubborn; he never listened to anybody.
I see.
Unlike Bawumia, by the way.
Unlike Bawumia, I'm sure that Kabir will have a few things to say, but the last part, I'm sure, will give you some comfort. Unlike the Bawumia bit. In 10 minutes, we'll take a break. So let me talk to Prof. We know these economic things. Yes. We know these economic things have been often on the lap of the vice president's office, economic management team, and all of that. How involved is the vice president's office in this? And is she the chair of the economic management team? How is it working?
I need to chip in that the vice president will be the one that will close the session.
Yeah, the session.
So I need to state that.
Right. Yes, very involved. As Professor Gachi would see or note, we are all advisors within the economy and financial sectors at the Vice President's office are key and integral to the discussions on the table on that day. We've been put into several committees, as you would know. I'm with the Structural Reforms Committee, so which I'll be joining the plenary session as well as that. So we are preparing documentations as far as the closing plenary as well is concerned. So the Vice President has actually been integral as far as this is concerned. And also something that has not happened before, as you'd see, we have a presidential economic advisor, and then we also have, but the experience of the Honorable Sektekpe. So we've come together as a unit. So it's one presidency, and that's exactly what we're doing as far as economic advisory is concerned at the presidential level. So we work as a team.
I see, great.
So we don't have a separation of this is that and that is that.
So,
here
okay.
and there.
So
The vice president is very integral to
Great.
this. And
So
as I said,
so
you have the president opening.
So there's an economic management team, really.
I mean, we have a formation of teams coming up, and in due course, officially, things will be announced.
Great. So is the MPP joining? I mean, is the last time in Senchi we didn't see the MPP. But have you received an invitation? Will you know? You extended the invitation to them?
Yeah.
Do you know whether they've responded that they are coming? Or is there anything today? Saturday's program starting on Monday?
I cannot tell.
You cannot tell now. Okay.
So first and foremost, there is this attitude of Ghanaians generally. This attitude of Yakonunti kind of control. That Yakonunti, that they are wary about that kind of approach. And you understand why sometimes people are a bit careful or hesitant, except apart from the cost aspect of it, we also have to send a signal that we are not so ready for what we promised the good people. Of course, democracy is well when it is participatory and inclusive. And it is in that regard that as a professional, I would sincerely think that there's very good intention in that approach to have consultation, to have dialogue. But the problem of that is also that you would engage in the bureaucracy. And we know the problems with bureaucracy when it comes to project implementation and delivery of goods. So these are the two sides. The government will have to take the choice whether to cut down the bureaucracy and go to work, or to engage or immerse themselves in the bureaucracy and do what is expected of them. There was also some comment about the fact that the previous government drilled from the program. No, the IMF program had a terminal point. It was even extended. So it cannot be the case that the government was in a hurry to run out of the program. As a matter of fact, the achievements that were made by the MPP government, largely in the first tenure, were attributed to some of the reforms that were done under the IMF program. Yeah. Even when we wanted to take credit for it, they said, no, you were an IMF program, so there was some big boss somewhere holding the cane. You see, so we cannot then begin to say that the government didn't follow that particular program. It was not at large. The IMF program was not at large. It was supposed to serve a particular purpose, and the government had met those particular deadlines. It was time for the government to move on. Of course, unfortunately, we are back to the same grandfather seeking, and we could have done things differently. Again, when we are talking about what brought us into that situation, we should not only be limiting it to the admitted fiscal indiscipline. That is part. But there were also general issues. For instance, if your debt is skyrocketing because of inflation, the exchange rate issue, which is not only internal but global, you cannot just blame the government entirely for that. If the government had to spend 25 billion in cleaning financial sector, it's a legacy issue. If excess capacity,
but if you had a PMJ, that was supposed to help reduce food inflation, you go ahead with it. It would affect the exchange rate.
So the PMJ, for example, did not work as was expected.
No. You see, the real sector had its turbulence, ups and downs. Okay, and once you have the food planting for food and jobs, not boosting the real sector, and then food inflation is also going high, people will. But let's also be mindful of the fact that the food inflation is not the factor of production, but it's also a product of the value chain, transportation. If fuel prices are going high, food inflation is going to be high. So it was not just a factor of production, but it was also a factor of several inputs going into the value chain. So sometimes when we do the analysis and we don't bring all these covariates into the formula, if we don't put all these covariates into the, I am saying that everything stopped government. But I agree, but I'm saying that once you are blaming government for everything, you must be mindful of the fact that the government working, there are certain factors the government want to have a firm hold on, but cannot. Because they are externally, or they call them exogenous factors, right? So we need to be mindful of this. And for instance, let me give an example. I had reservation.
Please, just 1 second. 1 second.
Okay, 1 second.
I like this conversation. And in fact, Dr.
and Prof
Kabiru
has to leave, so.
brings the issue about it. And I think it is important to say that, look, we are not saying that there were no exogenous factors. I don't want to go beyond the shores of this country. I'm coming back to the reason why a national economic dialogue like this is needed. You see, the mistakes our friends in the NPP made, essentially that the government that was not hung together. If you knew that you had exchange rate problems, you don't wait and use Bank of Ghana to do those things. You fix one of the critical issues concerning inflation in this country is food inflation. So you have your PFG, which was doing whatever it wanted by itself. Fertilizers were going all the way. People were even selling the fertilizer. We don't know what is happening. You had food. You had a bumper harvest sometime, but you had no silos to keep them. You know, and so when you don't do those things,
there was a warehouse project, one district.
Yeah, but you see, it didn't even continue. As I speak, I can tell you, for instance, recently when we had that scare from the food drought, the minister had to tell me that, look, he even felt shy asking our neighbors for food. But we are not invested in those silos. So it's not a question about heaping all the blame on the particular government. We are saying that there are things we need to do synergistically to ensure that once you are fixing roads, fixing the silos, fixing the value chain issue, the road for it, you do all of that in tandem.
I agree. And I think
it's important
take one cycle to do all that. And he agrees that even the State of a Nation address presented by Mr. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, I sat down on the chamber and I was asked, can he do all this in 4 years? But the side of me also tells me that no, maybe he's going to set foundation on some of them for other people to continue. That gives us the idea that a particular government cannot do it all, right? So to say that this was not done, that was what part of it was done, and another government is coming to continue so that we'll solve the generational problem. That is the angle sometimes I want us to come. Yeah. So when we don't do that analysis and we heap it on one government, you see the tendency for that government or its officials and operatives as they don't were would probably want to respond. And that does not engender national discourse in terms of the development.
But I wanted to answer whether the MPP will participate or not, or you are not in a position.
As a matter of fact, I mean, the party will be there. But as a member of parliament, I would be happy to get an invitation. I would be happy to contribute to our national discourse. I was a bit disappointed when the conference on small-scale mining was done without an invitation to the minority members of parliament, where they only give invitation to the majority members of parliament. And it's a conference on galamsey or small-scale mining. Okay, and I raised an issue with some colleagues. This conference is only about majority members of parliament, or it's about the country? So if an invitation is coming to the majority members of parliament, and we should be encouraged, I will encourage them to attend. For the party, it is a decision of the party to take.
And they'll participate if the government discontinue the revocation of the dismissal.
Of course, the reason why that is brought, it's a very genuine point he's bringing for, because you see, you want to rally a country around a policy, right? That's the reason why you are inviting us. You are not inviting us for the window dressing or for the cosmetic effect of it. You think that you must carry everyone along. Now, part of that particular population has been summarily dismissed without even hearing from them, without proper processes. They are part of and if you exude good faith and bring them on board or reinstate those people, it will this is a government that is willing. No, I'm just giving an example that is a demonstration of good faith, that this is a government that is willing to work with everyone. But you end up starting dismissing the former government's appointees or people employed in the public sector.
I think we need to
we'll take a break.
Yeah, but
we'll take it when we come back.
There's a misleading element to it.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll deal with the dismissal.
You agree there's a misleading element?
We'll clarify that.
You see, so we're not even discussing, unless of course you want to broach the discussion of the dismissal.
We'll do that in the next segment.
No, I'm saying
we'll do that in the next segment.
There is concern about some section of Ghanaians that they have been dismissed.
Very well.
And that concern, if you want to bring everyone on board to a national economic dialogue, you must first demonstrate good faith by bringing those people into the governance space in the public sector.
Very well.
Then we can then begin to talk about
the venue? Is everybody? Can everybody just walk in?
Yeah, the venue is Accra International Conference Center.
Can everybody just walk in? Do you know whether the minority has been given an invitation?
Yeah, we have extended invitation. But
individual members know.
I have one card extra. I can give it to you.
I'm not sure he can come in isolation. No. If his people say don't come, you're not coming.
He's happy to come as an MP, not as a... So I'll give you that one extra.
Okay, that's good for you.
Kabiru, you share my committee with me. Are you happy to come?
Which committee is that?
Social reforms. Yeah. So I'm very happy about the atmosphere surrounding the dialogue. I'm very happy about the comment made by Mr. Franklin Kujo. It's very useful. We need to come together as a nation to chart a course. So we are waiting for all those invited on Monday and Tuesday. And those unfortunately not invited, you are invited through live telecast and then social media streams. Thank you.
Well. Thank you. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at the dismissal issue. We'll look at the NSA scandal and the way the president puts it in the State of the Nation. This is the big issue. Don't go away.
Are you ready for the road trip of a lifetime? All is set to explore 14 amazing regions of Ghana on the Heritage Caravan 2025.
If you want to come to Basu, see the dancing and write your name.
Dive deep into the rich Ghanaian culture through the food, the music, the history, and the captivating traditions. From the 2nd to the 9th of March 2025, you will experience the road trip of a lifetime. Build connections, network, and share unforgettable memories with fellow adventurers.
You have done half of the way. You have half more to go. How are you feeling?
Okay, I'll never do this again.
So this is a grand entry into the water for a hot afternoon bath.
The Heritage Caravan will smoothly drive through the Greater Accra region, Eastern, Volta, Uchi, Northeast, Upper East, Northern, Savannah, Bono, Bono East, Ahafo, Ashanti, Western North, Western and Central regions. Throughout the 8 days on the road, groove to authentic live band music on the wheels with the melodic In Chin Chin Band. The Heritage Caravan 2025 will be fun, educative, refreshing, and most of all, remarkable. Stay updated. Follow all Channel 1 TV and 97.3 City FM social media handles for updates and join the conversation with the hashtag Heritage Caravan 2025. The Heritage Caravan 2025 is powered by Channel 1 TV in partnership with the Ghana Tourism Authority with support from 97.3 City FM and proudly sponsored by the National Lottery Authority, Hollard Insurance, Omni Basic Bank, Goyle PLC, GB Foods, Standard Water, Apollonia City, and Beaver Beverages. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, welcome back. This is a big issue, the final lap of the program. Franklin Kujo, Dr. Sharif Mahama, and Dr. Kabiru Mahama are my guests here. A number of things we've been discussing. The last lap, we focused on the National Service scandal, the ghost names and all of that, as mentioned by the President, and also the dismissal or so-called revocation of appointments of persons employed into the public sector after December 7. Let's start off with that. frankly, let me start off with you. You deal with a lot of public sector reform issues, etc. People have been employed into the public sector, albeit at December 7. A new government comes and asks them to go home. Is that proper? How should we be looking at that?
Well, to be fair, I seriously think that each institution that undertook this recruitment, we need to ask questions. What was the plan? Was there a plan to increase the workforce by a certain date? We need to know what really was the guiding, should I call it the guidelines or the guiding post for these recruitment. I think that's where we should start from. Otherwise, if it was just piling people and putting them there, then there's a real challenge. So I think, for me, everything we're going to ask ourselves, what is the staff strength? What are the, should I call it, the numbers that are optimal that particular institution needs? And whether really there was a plan to employ this number of people. And I think it's all part of the auditing that must be done. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to determine whether these are MPP people. And the other question I've been asking myself, if indeed people have been employed and they've been employed properly, why are we worried that? Anyway, that's why we should actually be worried that a new administration has come in and decided that they were going to do away with all the things. So for me, I think we should go back to what guidelines there are within that service or the entire public service, whether it was followed and whether there were gaps to actually fill. But that's another thing. You don't want to. You want to reduce the bureaucracy. So you don't want to just employ people. So let's go back and ask: all these people who have been appointed, what role were they performing? What work actually were they supposed to do? Was it part of the plan? If it is not, then like Musk will ask you, what did you do last week? Tell us what you are doing here. And essentially, is it in sync with the overall growth of that particular institution? And that's another thing we should be talking about, public sector reform. It's just too difficult. I don't know how all of a sudden people are recruited. If before this November, I'll probably have no problem with it. But between December 7th and January, I think in all fairness, it will be really difficult to justify those ones. But you probably don't know. It's all part of a snail, bureaucracies. They probably have the numbers they needed to do, and somebody sat on it, forgot, realized, hey, we are out of power. So fix these people. It's natural. So we need to go back and look each of them. Did they have the right qualifications? Did that institution actually need those people? It's the only way we can solve this. Otherwise, anything else I would suggest, it's just excuse me, hot air, because it will be difficult for me to rationalize this.
Prof. It's quite interesting.
Yes. So I mean, Ghanaians employed.
Yes.
Government is a
in time past, my brother. In time past, could you say you're not guilty of sending people or instrumental in sending NDC folks home who were employed? I'm not justifying. I'm just asking.
Another question. So NDC people.
Yeah.
You said our people.
Yeah, he said people. No. What I'm going to ask is what I'm going to ask.
I know.
Okay, so but in the past, were you instrumental in playing a role in sending people's home?
So this question,
as far as employment is concerned,
this question is a direct rule. There's no single person who can single evidence of his appointment terminated as a result of the change of government. The only reference people refer to is the Minister of Health, direction by the former minister, that those without the 2017 batch has no financial clearance.
Anaba, who was head of Ridge Hospital, what took him home?
No, Anaba.
Yes.
Anaba was a political appointee. He was appointed as a CEO of Ridge Hospital.
How is CEO of a Ridge Hospital a political appointee?
No, let us not mess apples. It was after that the Supreme Court ruled.
This is the public
It was after that the Supreme Court ruled. Anaba's issue, if you are appointed as a CEO of a public institution like Ridge Hospital, he was not a staff. I know Anaba was operating his private hospital internally before that appointment.
So what is wrong with that?
No, I'm just saying.
So what is wrong with him operating? Was he qualified?
No, the point is
was he qualified to hold that role?
CEO's appointments are political appointments.
Says who? By what?
No, but was he qualified?
Was he qualified?
The president appoints.
That is a public hospital. So whoever the president appoints, whoever the president appoints, Dr. Sheriff, whoever the president appoints.
Let us not mix them.
Then he's making. I'm not telling the truth.
The truth is that CEOs are political appointees.
So CEOs like any other
CEOs like any. Well, no one is having issue that you went and sacked SIC boss. We are not raising issue with it. No one is raising issue with NSS. No one is raising issue with the institution you are sacking people in the place.
So we should look at.
But we are looking at those employed by the public and civil service.
Yes, we're going to come to that.
Okay. And I'm saying that there's no single person on record that was sacked by the MPP government in those categories. That's the point I'm making.
No, but when you came in, letters were issued to the effect.
The fact is that there were many people in the public service who were not political. They were just doing their
jobs. And
they were issued termination letters to go home.
And I'm saying that who?
There are a number of them.
And I'm saying that give example of one.
There are 1,001 of them.
No, I'm saying that give example of one. The only incident they reference is the Minister of Health. But as we speak today, even the MPP government end up recruiting every single person and nurse. Those were the areas. We never left any area in the NDC regime. So that was the only reference they said. That the Minister for Health then asked that, those 1,500 or 15,000 people, there were no financial clearance for them, so they should suspend. They were not even said that the recruitment should be suspended. That's the only reference in all this discussion. They've not been able to provide one single evidence.
The examples abound.
Yeah,
the National Service Secretariat, NHIA.
National Service Secretariat. National Service Secretariat. It was a corruption scandal.
Wait.
So corruption scandal hit National Service Secretariat, and every single person in that particular cohort was asked to go.
No, that's different. These are different. So I mean, if you
address yourself,
if you take this position, you will be surprised.
You see why the public services?
No, give me
the 1,001 people.
I know personally people who were just asked to go home because.
And I'm saying that give example of that person.
No, you want me to mention names?
Even letters. I can give you letters of those people. I can give you letters of, but just
you want me to produce letters on the program, right?
No, for the purpose of this discussion, this discussion has gone on for almost 2-3 weeks. So one should have been kind and good enough.
In fact, we've seen letters even on social media. Not even one single. Who now heads the place?
No, so it wasn't. So that's the point.
No, he wasn't a political person at the time.
No. He was not a political person, but there was an issue. There was an issue of insubordination. Let us not be mixing apples.
What was it?
Yahya Koku had issue with his CEO. He wasn't the only NDC person in that institution.
And who advocated of another?
You see, that's what I'm saying.
Was there a committee?
I know of a brother who was sacked at GRA. I don't equate it to political sacking. Because he had issue with management. They went through what they thought that the proper thing is to sack the person. And they sacked the person.
So that's what happened.
That is different from mass.
No, what's that what happened in
mass dismissal of people in GRA, in Ghana Health, Water Service, in Ghana Civil Aviation, everywhere.
The other point
is different.
See, the other point is you've been there. You've not made plans, or there's no apparent plan to employ people. Just after you lose an election, a new government is about to come. Everything new, wanting to know what the public sector you can.
No, before you go on that,
all of a sudden you employ people.
No, let me be candid. Every single person that was a knee-jerk recruitment after the NPP had lost an election was not done in good faith, and every government has a right to question it. That's my position. But I'm saying that we should not lump set cases with people.
So there should be a review.
No, there should be a review.
Those ones that started long before.
Some people also had their process started. They went through aptitude tests. They went through even way before December. So when the letter is given in December, that's fair.
That's fair.
But the whole scale
so indeed, the health minister, had cause.
See why I say it's misleading.
Yeah, the health minister has said that they will look at it in that sense.
Why I say this issue is misleading is that there was a clear directive from the chief of staff. What did the directive read? It says that from a certain cut-off period, which is after, right? So whatever is being dealt with,
are doing outside that.
No, if anyone is doing, deal with that. But the chief of staff issued a directive, and the clear directive of the chief of staff is what holds.
So
anything coming from the grapevine ought to be dealt with differently.
How about if the process started?
That's what coming. So what the chief of staff did was a very responsible thing to do. The timing itself is questionable, but he's called for an audit of these recruitment processes.
So the audit is good.
The audit is that's what goes in.
Better.
Right. So you look at the audit to say, okay, was due process for it? Takes time to have an audit. Was this job advertised? If yes, was there need for it? Was there financial clearance for it? Right? Is it a fit for purpose role?
Yeah.
Is it analogous to what is being done? Right, so there are terms of reference to what the chief of staff has directed.
But do we know the number? Because so far nobody's put up the number.
That is what he calls the audit would reveal the number. So this is a statement he went out with, a very responsible statement at that. So let's be guided by the fact that the chief of staff, in his capacity as chief of staff, has issued a statement, a clear directive, calling for this. So if we're having any engagement outside the remit of the directive of the chief of staff, that is neither here nor there.
Yeah. So, but
that is grapevine.
It's not grapevine. It goes to the abuse of that directive.
Yes.
That I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom. I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom. I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom for a directive he has given, and people are going outside. But once people are doing that,
so what is the evidence
for order? No, for instance, at NIP, NIP, every single person who was there working with Kofi Ofosu-Kwakye has been sent home.
But the reason, that's a peculiar case.
Let me give you. But that's a peculiar case. I'll give you the response.
Look, yes, and that's a peculiar case.
Reason being that,
Kofi's not worried about it.
Reason being that,
that's a peculiar
reason
case.
Being that they
it
were
has
paid
nothing
from
to do with that.
IGF. They were not paid.
No,
they were not paid from.
They were being paid
Consolidated Fund.
Apparently, they were. Of course, the real issue is that those guys, as I've heard from Kofi himself, that those guys were never regular because it's a World Bank project housed at the presidency, so they couldn't be put on salary. They were getting allowances, so it was going to be difficult to regularize them. But his colleagues accused him of not regularizing them. I don't think the two are the same. So I put up a post against that as well until I got sufficient information, even from Kofi himself, that it's not a deliberate thing the NDC guy was doing, and that he's right. He wants to. Because there's even no money to pay them anyway. I said they should even collapse that NEIP into all the various existing youth enterprises.
As we are just speaking, appointment dated 13 February 2025.
13 February?
Yes.
No. 2024.
2024. No, sorry, I got that. 3rd December. 3rd December, before the elections, has been revoked.
But was due
by a letter. That's what I'm saying that. That is where you need. Yes, and this is GRA. The appointment was on 3rd December. The issue is that wait and do the audit.
So who did?
No. Look, the chief of staff
issued this.
Is a GRA. The GRA boss. A revocation appointment. I write in reference to offer of your appointment made in December 2024.
Signed off by who?
Pursuant to directive received from the chief of staff, a letter dated 10 February 2025, the offer of appointment has been revoked.
No, that's
Thank
wrong.
you.
That's wrong.
Your favor, signed by Amma Rodolph.
Was it in reference to the chief of staff? Was it?
They reference the chief of staff directive.
Okay, but the chief of staff directive
doesn't cover that. So that's the point I'm making.
So that's a person.
So when we are discussing them because people are taking advantage of the directive. And also, the directive was not that. I'm not sure the directive was that revoke the appointment. The directive was that you can suspend them and investigate.
Yeah, exactly.
But people have, on the basis of directive, revoking appointments.
So you can.
So that is the core of the problem.
Yeah.
So you are not blaming the chief of staff, but you are also blaming the government because those doing it are part of the government. Those issuing those revocation are CEOs appointed by the government.
No, but
in complete
appointed by the government.
In flagrant disrespect of the order of the chief.
We should find.
I think we should deal with them
on a need basis.
And also, the chief of staff by now should have come to say that considering the information, the avalanche of information we have received, okay,
to clarify his order,
i.e. different mass dismissal of people from different, I direct that wasn't my order. Please reinstate everyone and do the investigation.
No.
But if the chief of staff is quiet, if the chief of staff is quiet and the government is quiet, it means that
he has given his directive. If it affects you, as I speak to you, several appeals, right, that having even in previous administrations have come to the desk of the chief of staff. He calls the HR, puts up a committee, calls the CEO or whoever is acting in charge. They look into it, regardless of government. If you have a merit, you are reinstated. So if this is even happening afresh or anew, if they have any case, they should petition. It will be looked at. So you see, when directive comes, administration is a very straightforward thing, and you have to be careful as to how, when you issue a directive, you want to go back and forth on issues. The directive is clear. So if it has affected you outside the scope of the directive, petition. That will be dealt with. You don't expect to put an onus on the chief of staff to come out with another statement. Let me give you a classic example of a business friend of mine who called in distress yesterday. He was like, there are a bunch of people moving around Roman Ridge, moving into government bungalows, ejecting people, right? And anyone developing a facility close by, worrying them. So I called the NS boss to ask that, are you aware of this? I said, these are a bunch of criminals. But someone out there could interpret it as a government action because there's a party in power. But the government has absolutely nothing to do with that whatsoever. That letter from GRA is not signed by a commissioner appointed by the president whatsoever. It's coming from a referencing directive. So, if he references it, that's what I'm saying. If he references it and it has an issue, petition.
Because clearly it goes outside of the scope.
But look at it. It goes outside the scope of what the chief of staff.
Exactly.
But there are a list of items. For all you know, undue process was followed in that recruitment process, and that's what was being activated. But they could just. But I know that there could be an element of abuse. No, this is what rationalizing. There could be an element of abuse.
And abusing it.
That is not to say there's no.
I mean, let's spend the next 5 minutes on the NSA thing.
Yeah, but as I said, it's.
What is your understanding of the NSA?
You deal with Kabiru.
But you have uncovered it.
So the NSA issue did not start in this regime. I know on the eve of the elections, there were some reports. Was it the Media Foundation? They did some way, even way before this government was ushered in. And
this government meaning what?
Mean the current NDC government.
Yeah.
I know on the eve, I had a privileged conversation. A privileged conversation, someone raising that matter with the vice president. And I was in that meeting. Just on the eve was some few days to the elections. It was privileged. And the measures they needed to take to avert that, whether they were right or so, the government needed to investigate and take actions. That was there. For me, I will not sit down here because NSS it's been a systematic, or it's been over the years, every single regime, people siphon state resources using the National Service Authority. People have been prosecuted. We don't know the state of those prosecutions. Nothing has been retrieved from them. And now it is happening now again. I remember, and I speak from also some bit of authority. I have served under the National Service Authority. In fact, a year I was doing the National Service. I was the National President of National Service Personnel Association, NASPA.
You're a big man.
And I had served with Mr. Kwabenu, Vincent, right? I'm exposed a bit to the workings of the National Service Authority. And people are taking advantage of the vulnerabilities of the system, the lack of definite numbers in the National Service scheme, and bloating the numbers, using mushrooms institutions that are not even accredited to siphon resources from the state. I think that the law must take its fullest course in this matter. People found culpable must be made to face the law. But we must put in system to avert some of this because it's been happening for over 10 years. What are we doing so wrong that we are not able to? We introduced the digitization. Our expectation was that every single person would be linked to the person Ghana card, said that you will not have double entries. But that it is also solving part of the problem. The human discretion is still there. Someone, they can get Ghana card for someone who is not even a student. So the digitization of the system with the Ghana card is part of the solution, but it is not holistic or fully the solution. We need to remove the human element. We need to make sure that National Accountant and Control General deal institution directly with the universities so that they can cross-check against the list presented by the National Service Authority. So if the controller have a desk, for instance, be responsible for auditing claims, the institution can write to the various institution and let's have the list of students who are graduating. So that if the institution is not recognized, no funds will be released for such a person. That is one way I think there are not enough checks and balances. That is actually causing some of these things. And I think it's unfortunate that people...
The president said 50, I mean, the it was said that the persons were going to be getting about 50 million cedis a month.
That is possible.
That's
that is
a lot of
possible,
money.
and I think that maybe because before it was a one-time, my police they want to have a bite.
But the money suspended. It's a question I always.
The money,
did people actually?
I don't know how they
They probably made an estimation based from the period to now. Maybe some of it.
How do you actually get paid? Because to be paid, you have to
when they did the audit.
Don't you have to do something?
But there's some people.
I know that there are biometric features and all of that.
So that's why maybe it's a very complicated scheme.
Very complicated.
And we need to get to the bottom.
No, well, it's an internal
yes,
job.
and the same people to give authorization.
It's an internal job.
So
it's an internal job, so you can understand how it's being done. But you see, I think that this should just set the base, not just to NSA, other agencies. For me, NAPCO is one of the interesting agencies.
But NAPCO doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't exist. But a real audit of it, go back to the audit. I'm not looking at the existence of it.
But there were 100,000 people.
Yeah, with these ghost names issues.
You know what I think we should do?
NAPCO has been vetted, the accounts have been audited, the
why are you
Controller General has submitted audit report.
Why are you acting uncomfortable with NAPCO?
on red herrings.
It's not red herrings. You see, when you have information as to how a certain agency was run, and you see similar incident happen, it only takes public responsibility to call for that to happen.
Very well.
So I hope that it's not a case of dry bones being mentioned, but it is something that I'm hoping that it could be looked into.
Very well.
But you see, the NSA issue, right? For me, Kabir, you're in government, and as responsible as we are, lifestyle is an issue.
Lifestyle audit.
No, when I say you can call it lifestyle audit. You also, I don't know how to, the Arabian style, Queen style of the head of the NSA. And none of you ever questioned or wanted to question how it was being fueled.
So, but if I see your chief growing because...
No, it's not about chief growing. Frankly, you're going extreme. No. It's not why I'm coming in. No.
I know.
Let's not trivialize this.
We are running out of time.
Let's not trivialize this, right? I mean, it became, I know, it became public knowledge, right, as the kind of wristwatches that she was in town.
And don't go about wristwatches.
No, don't.
The Chilean finance minister was arrested.
George Mukhtar has changed the back she's holding.
Don't be trivialized. I mean, come on.
Go to wristwatch.
No.
Frankly,
the only way we should
be fair to Joyce, please don't do that.
Public sector reform is important, and I think we should rationalize all these institutions. National Service, YEA, GEA, all these youth things must be collapsed into one entity and be properly controlled. We are creating too many of them and wasting money too much. So I think that's the only thing I can say for that.
Well, I mean, but the military training, at least, proposed by President Mahama, may bring a sense of discipline to an extent and a psychological mindset.
Establishing the national service provider for military training. It was supposed to be even 2 years, but due to resources constraint, Governor of Adon has weathered it
Countries
down.
that use that actually, they have a purpose.
So that military. But there was also a misrepresentation by the president. The ESLA. The president stated that some 450 billion is corrected when some 750 billion is the debt. But ESLA is not for only payment of energy sector debt. It is for public lighting, it's for rural electrification system, it's for roads. So all this put together. And mind you, fuel and generation are the two major components of the energy sector debt. Fuel alone costs us about 70 million a month. Even if you do on the back of the envelope calculation of $8, I mean, 8 Ghana cedis to $1, you are going to spend more than the 450 billion that he said it is in the account. So that has to be noted.
So this is how we conclude today's edition of the program. Thanks so much for doing the viewing and the listening. Franklin was in studio today. I must put that on record once again. Have a good afternoon.
Welcome to the Wonder Space Show with Miss Natalie.
In a place you want to discover, there's so much to uncover.